You want to drive faster? Listen in as Kinch Rendell, an SCCA National Trophy winner and multi-time Pro Solo champion himself, interviews the best autocrossers in the land. He talks fast and drives even faster. And now here's your host, Kinch Rendell.
Hello there. This was another fun interview chat I had. Another national champion. Also a guy who, if you've gone to nationals or been anywhere around him, you know he has a clean car. And usually somewhat of a unique car. He might add something to them at times to stand out a little bit. If he has a golf cart, it might be over the top so he can win the awards at nationals. Oh yes, cars are clean because he owns a detail shop or two as well, which we chat about that a little bit, which is fun. I always like hearing from any of you who also are involved in any kind of business, but also if it ties into cars in some way, since we spend a lot of time with our cars. So let me say again, national champion, fast guy, been fast for a long time, still is fast, great guy. Also an announcer at times, just for a few of you, you'll recognize that right off the bat, his voice. So let's get to this, because this is another long interview. So none other than Kevin Dietz from the Northwest. Kevin, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Kinch. Glad to be here.
Yeah, thank you for putting up with me back and forth on when I can get you in here. I appreciate it already. So tell us, where are you at physically? Where do you live? Where do you race?
I'm in the Northwest region, so beautiful state of Washington State in the Emerald City. I live just south of Seattle in a little suburb called Federal Way, which is a weird name for a city. But I didn't name it, but it's called Federal Way, Washington.
Fun. And what is that really? What sites do you race at around there? I'm really jealous of the one for sure.
Yeah, you know the one, the jewel of the crown. Well, gosh, I've been autocrossing for so many years. We have raced all over the place, and some of those sites are no longer available to us. But our typical locations as of right now are Bremerton Raceway out in beautiful Bremerton. It's an old airport runway taxiway. I know a lot of regions have taxiways, runways, so a little bit limited in what we can do with course designs there, but hey, a site's a site. Excuse me. And obviously Packwood, that's the big one. And that's out there at the foot of Mount Rainier in what literally is like a national park, and I know you've been there, and it's amazing. It's just I feel so blessed that our region has a site like that, and it's for sale, by the way, and our region can't afford to buy it, unfortunately. I wish we could. I wish that there was some benefactor that would step in and purchase it so that future generations of autocrossers and motorheads could use that site, because I think if you sat down with a blank piece of paper and designed your ultimate autocross site, it would look very similar to Packwood. I mean, with two 400 by 800 square foot buildings for pits and for grid, and a giant pad underneath the majestic Mount Rainier with the mountains all around. I mean, it doesn't get much better than that. I've autocrossed all over the country, and there is no site as beautiful as Packwood.
Yeah, I've said probably in the podcast, and I'll say it again, people need to make it out there for an event. See if you can fly and drive. It's a nice drive even up there. I did it again this past year. It's like 18 or 19 hours at least for me, from here. Still worth it, even towing. I'm like, oh, it's just so fun to get up there. And then even making it to Mount Rainier, if you go up there, I mean, there's always ice on top of there. There's always glaciers and such. It's a beautiful, small, very unique place. Oh, go back and tell us. So you said you've been autocrossing for a while. How long have you been autocrossing? When did this start?
Oh, boy, I date myself here. I think I started autocrossing in the mid-'80s. I autocrossed a little bit, a couple of years, and then I got in jet skiing big time, and then I met a guy, Glenn Hernandez, at a video arcade playing race car driving games. And, boy, I was beating everybody, and the attendants there said, oh, you got to meet this other guy. He beats everybody like you do. And then one day I'm sitting there playing, and this guy sits down next to me and says, oh, I think it was at Daytona, USA. Remember that video game? And it was interesting because that was the first video game that had like a force feedback wheel and actually had pedals, brakes, and gas that actually did something. And typically I could beat people in the first 100 feet. I'd jump them off the line because I wouldn't over-rev it, and I'd hit the RPMs just right. And I didn't know at the time, but Glenn sits down and I say, "What track, hard, medium, or expert?" He goes, I don't care, whatever track you want." And I'm like, wow, nobody says that. So I said, "Okay, let's do expert," thinking he's going to shy away. He says, "Okay, great." And boy, as soon as they go doot, 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 and we take off, and I look over at his screen, and we are fender to fender, and I knew at that moment, oh, this guy is awesome. And we became fast friends after that. I think I beat him by a fender on the first run. We had to do it again. I think the second time he beat me by a fender and told me about autocross, and I said, I used to do that, and boy, I jumped back in with both feet after that, and I've been autocrossing my first nationals was, I think, 1999, I think, was my first autocross. So, at nationals, I should say. So I've been going to nationals ever since. So I have a good 20 years, 25 years maybe, autocrossing.
Yeah, I got there a couple years later to nationals, and even though it was like my first year, I just keep going. It's like, I'm very much like you. I can't stop. It's like, oh, this is the fun. This is the hobby to go after. It's just all around for me. We're going to interject into, what do you do work-wise? Just tell us it's interesting what different people at autocrossing can autocross a lot do. So go ahead and tell us about Jim's detail shop.
Yeah, that's where I work. I started working there pretty much out of high school. I was going to college, taking business classes, and going to school at night and working during the day. And I got an opportunity to take the detail shop I was working at over. And it was funny at the time because I was 20 years old, 21, maybe 22 at the most. I think I bought my house when I was 21 or 22, and the owner came to me and said, because I'd always bugged him about taking it over from him, but I didn't have any money. Who has money at that age? I don't have any money. So I said, yeah, I'd love to take it over, but I don't have any money. And he goes, well, I'll make you a sweet deal. I'm like, okay. So yeah, he wanted me to just cash him out for his inventory that he had in products and chemicals and whatnot, and then he made me promise that I wouldn't go out of business in the next 2 years because the landlord wouldn't let him out of the lease. And I said, okay, I'll do it, because I'm young and I don't know anything. And I did it, and I went to my folks and I said, hey, can I borrow $9,000? And they said, sure. And after the fact, my father said, for $9,000, that was way cheaper than college. He figured I would learn more in a couple of years running my own business than I would in college at all, ever. And well, he was right. Not only did I learn a lot, but I love it. I still love it. And that was, way back in 1997 or so. And still going strong this now. We did have 3 shops at one time, and I think our first year in business we grossed $160,000. I thought to myself, wow, that's amazing. And at 21, but then a few years later we did over $1 million in sales. That's a lot of wax applied to cars. And I still love it. I still love it to this day. And we have 2 shops right now, and I love my job. And a lot of people can't say that they love their job, and I definitely can say that I love what I do. I love cars, so I get to work with cars every day. I get to work with people that love their cars, so my customers love us. And I've grown to love working with these young guys that work for me and molding them into professionals and launching them off into their careers after they leave me, because I have a kind of an entry-level program for most of these guys, and I love it. I love the aspect of working with these young guys that work for me, and I love the car culture in general. So I feel blessed to wake up every day and really enjoy what I do. Are there days that I'm frustrated? Yes, of course. Anybody has that. But I really love what I do, and I feel so blessed to be in that situation. And because now I own the shops and I've been doing it a long time, my time is my own. So if I want to work on other projects and not necessarily work that day, I can do that. And I just feel blessed. And of course, I've given back to the autocross community. I sponsor a lot of local region events and series because I feel like I've gotten so much out of autocross. The classic, I came for the racing, I stay for the people is totally legit with me. That is how I look at the sport in general. I'm a perfectionist. I like to be the best at whatever I do, and I love the competition. The competition is what brings me to autocrossing, but the people is what makes me stay.
Yeah, no kidding. And I want to come back and circle back to some of the things you said and just point out to people that the way you were able to get into a business, you worked there first, and you were actually brave enough to be like, yeah, I want to take these over. Like, I want to keep doing this. And that they're saying, what I hear Tony Robbins just say recently, only 14% of businesses are ever sold. Because in that case, if you wouldn't have been there to take that over, he probably would have shut it down if he could have gotten on the lease. So anybody wanting to do a business or such, realize that a lot of businesses will change hands in the next 10 and 15 years because a lot of people that are older having these businesses don't want to do them anymore. And I love that also you're doing something around cars, because I think so many of us, I'm included, like, how can I make money with cars? How can I make money with cars? It doesn't seem like the easiest thing to do. Like, everyone wants to have a race shop or something, and yet I've interviewed people and they said, no, it's not the racing, it's the maintenance. So it's neat to hear that something like detailing cars, and what else did I read? Window tint, anything else you can do in that realm might get you around something you really like. And the big key of what I say is success in my world, you said you have free time, or you control your time. That's, yes. I realize not every small business owner can say that, but that should be the goal, whereas some people, I think, buy a business and they're really buying a job, because all they have to do is they have to service it. They don't have employees. And luckily for your sake, you like working with your employees, because that's the other challenge for some people. If you're not a leader or a mentor like you are, it may not be so much fun. So I appreciate you sharing that, because once again, somebody else may have an idea, oh, how could I do that? And maybe Kevin gives them some advice of how to do that. So obviously you've been doing it for a while.
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly the case. I think that, he would have probably just shut down and would have gone away. But, and when I jumped on board, I didn't know what I was doing. I was naive to running the business and all that. And I totally hear what you say. I would say a lot of people that own their own businesses really own their own job.
Yeah.
And that's different. I've worked really hard and what's hard for an entrepreneur is to let go, I think. Typically, most entrepreneurs are A-type personalities. They want to control everything. They want to make everything's right. I'm super passionate about everything I do. I want my customers to be ecstatic with the service we give them. And what can happen for a lot of entrepreneurs is they can fall into the trap that they have to be there. And I went through this evolution when I was in all these years of running my own company. But what you have to really be understanding of is you have to delegate. You have to build a framework for your employees to work within. And you have to understand that they are not you. They are going to do things slightly different than you are. But at the end of the day, if you have happy customers, and really I focus on that the most. I don't care if I make money on each customer. That's not, and I teach my managers this. It doesn't matter if we made money or not. I want that customer to be happy with the service we gave them. And if we focus on that, the money will come. And if I delegate and if I give my managers the feeling that it's their shop and it's their business, and I don't come and run ruckshaw over their, over the top of them, then they'll want to perform, and they'll take upon themselves the whole idea of what I try to foster, and that is happy customers and a good work environment for all their employees that they work under them. And that affords me free time to go racing, to do whatever I choose to do. And that, to me, is priceless. I could make more money if I worked in my shops every day, but I will take less money and more freedom any day of the week at this point. So
I have to second that.
What
Same thing for me, and that hit me years ago. Even when I finally quit and just went, okay, more Riptide, my own consulting, I made less money but had more time, and finally got to the point where other people make more money than me because I'm willing to make less money as well as to give them more ownership. Which is like you're saying,
Yes.
I think people are happier when you're not trying to micromanage and expect them to do what you would do. Otherwise, yeah, they're not a robot. They're not artificial intelligence that's just going to do what they're supposed to do all the time. So that's great business advice.
Yeah, you got to inspire them.
Yep.
Yeah, you got to inspire them. They have to take ownership in the shop. And frankly, I pay my managers a certain wage. I live on the same wage I pay my managers. Now, I could do that. I'm a single guy, no kids. I can live very cheaply. You know, my biggest expense in my life literally is my mortgages and my racing fetish.
Yeah.
You know, I got to have new tires. I got to have this. I got to have that. But I can live very frugally. So I live within the same amount of money I pay my guys, which is what makes me, it keeps me humble and keeps me focused on the business and all that. But I just choose that freedom. I have willingly and knowingly give away my money to my employees so that I can do other things.
Yeah, I used to think, why does my dad not change his own oil? He could save some money. I don't know when it hit me, but that finally hit me that, oh yeah, time is huge. That's what I think a lot of people finally realize. Time is what everybody wants more of, or more control of. Oh, and something else you said that I want to give out there, especially for everybody younger, is you said maybe you said that your dad said that you would learn more having your own business than in college. Well, I will admit that I have 2 business degrees, but I learned more about business by inviting myself to an Amway meeting while in college and being in Amway for 2 years. Because I was trying to run my own little business and reading their books about business and marketing and talking to people and sales. So I can tell anybody, and my advice in my business podcast I used to put out all the time was, go work at a small company so you can see the inner workings of it. Your managers get it. It's surely they're learning enough that they could learn how to run their own small business as well. So that's another little 2 cents I have for people is, the smaller it is, the more you can learn from people, and maybe someday, like you, take it over.
Yes, yeah. I fully hope that at some point when I'm ready to hang up my hat on that business, that I've got someone willing to step up and do what I did for Jim years ago, and take it over, because I'd like to keep giving back. I was given an opportunity in life, and I would like to continue that good karma. I'm all about karma.
Yeah.
I'm all about, reap what you sow, and I'm all about positivity. And like you, I think I'm always learning. I'm always about growth. I'm always about understanding. I'm always about knowledge. And the more I learn about anything, the more I realize I don't know. I mean, that's the very classic thing, teaching for evolution. People say, well, how long did it take you to learn to look ahead? And I tell them, well, when I figure it out, I'll let you know, because I'm like you. I am constantly trying to be better at my sport.
I'm not a robot. I can admit that. I don't always look ahead. Sometimes I'm like, where are you looking? You need to look further ahead. Like, it just repeats itself sometimes. Oh, and let's plug. We'll get to Evo School. We'll come back to that. I'll start this a little bit because I'd written that down. So we need to thank you for the video live streaming that you had done for, what do you think, 2012 till 2016, 2017?
I think 2016. Yeah, 2012 to 2016. That was. Go ahead.
Say the technology again, because I didn't write down. I forget what that was on. Ustream. There you go. It was on Ustream. Then you went out and you did the equipment. You geeked out to figure out what it would take, and you set that thing up for us, so that those of us that weren't at a certain event could log in and check that out. I'm hoping also, as you describe this, people will think, how can we get that again? And maybe it's people speaking up and saying, hey, can Kevin do that for us? Or can we form something and talk to Kevin and find out how to get that going? So tell us more about that.
Yeah, so that came about because we started using Ustream to do the live audio feeds, which, I forget the gentleman that actually started that. I didn't think of that idea, but SCCA adopted that pretty quickly. Hey, we can, I think he was driving a mod car. He had no radio in his car, but he wanted to hear the times. So I wish I knew the gentleman's name that started that process. But he wanted to hear the Times in his mud car, so he rigged up a Ustream feed with the live audio from the radio so he could hear. Well, SCCA kind of got wind of that. They said, hey, we can do that for everybody. And I said, well, so then I said to, it was Hayward at the time, Wagner, I said, why don't we add a camera? We're already using Ustream. They have live video. Let's just put a camera at the start line. So even if it's just a static camera at the start line, it would be more interesting than a black screen and just audio only. And, yeah, I mean, Hayward at the time wasn't sure if that'd be interesting to people, but I had a feeling that would be awesome for people. And then, yeah, I literally had no idea how to live stream anything, but taught myself how to live stream, took hundreds of hours literally teaching myself how to live stream and going through all kinds of iterations of camera combinations and what works and what doesn't work, and it was quite challenging. But as time went on, for those folks that were watching the live stream could probably see the progression. I got better and better and better and better at it. And I think the last year we did it, we had, for what it was, this is all out of my pocket. I think I spent at least $5,000 on equipment and stuff to make it happen. And I think by the end, the last year we did it, we had multiple cameras. We had 2 or 3 cameras, and I know that I took time at the Pro Solos to actually produce it. So I'm sitting in the announce vehicle, and I'm switching cameras, and I'm putting up the names of the drivers, and I'm typing in the reactions and who wins and the differentials, and it was quite the learning curve, and I think I was pretty proud of the results at the end because, like a lot of people listening right now, you're an autocross junkie. If you're listening to me talk on Kinch's podcast, you're an autocross junkie, and I am an autocross junkie, and I wanted that whole process to kind of take off organically and have other millennials or other people that are actually smarter than me in the whole computer industry and networking to take it over, so that when the national events went to each city and each town and had all these events, that I could reliably turn on my computer and watch and listen to the event because I just love it. I love the people, I love the competition, and I love the announcers. A good announcer can really bring you in, and I just wanted to be part of that. I wanted to share autocross with the world. It started off, I wanted to share with my region, but it turned into I want to share it with everybody. I want everybody to know about this sport. And I think at the end there, we grew viewership at the national championships. Every year we doubled the viewership. And I think the last year I did it, before I'd even get the live stream going, I saw there was 250 people sitting there on their computers the moment I turned it on, waiting. And that's 250 people on each course, West course and East course, waiting to watch their friends, their family, compete out there at the national championships. And I thought, wow, this is amazing. I think the final year we did it, we had 25,000 unique views because we started to trend on Ustream's main page. And I was told by other people, I don't use Roku, but apparently we were trending on the main page on both of those channels because there were so many people logging in and watching the event online live. And I was so proud of that. I was like, it gave me a reason to wake up before the sun came up at nationals every day and then be pulling my equipment down as the sun was going down every day for all, 5 days at nationals plus the 2 days at the Pro Solo. So 5, 6, 7 days, sun up to sundown. It made it worthwhile to me because I knew there were so many people that were really counting on being able to watch and listen to their friends and family race.
Yeah, I mean, $5,000 is a lot to spend, but then also the amount of energy. When I even stay for the Pro Solo and Nationals till Thursday, Friday, you can just get cooked even if you're not working the whole time. Oh my goodness! So thank you for doing that. That is crazy.
Yeah, no problem. It was it's a connectivity issue. It was our biggest problem. Using a pedestrian or a Wi-Fi connection, a hotspot. That was some of our challenges that we had. But that's what that. You do anything awesome, you're going to put some effort into it. There's nothing that is awesome that is easy. Yeah, awesome means work.
Especially not cutting edge when you're more bleeding edge and getting to that. So you mentioned Evo School. When did you get involved with that? Did you first take some classes? Did you start teaching? What happened there? Give us the background.
Good question. It was interesting with Evolution. I was racing. I have a lot of talented guys, as a lot of regions do. I have my talented guys in our region. And Glenn Hernandez was my co-driver when I first started, and he was an Evolution instructor. So I got the benefits of, when I first really got serious about autocross, to have an Evolution instructor as my co-driver. Wow. So I credit that to my skill set now, as I never had a chance to do it the wrong way, so to speak. I from the very beginning, had a guy that was super, super knowledgeable that could help me hone my craft and get really good at my craft. So I was able to just vault in my skill level, to the moon right away. And I had some local region guys, Ron Bauer meaning one of them. He and I are great benchmarks for each other because we were both passionate, like there's no tomorrow, about autocrossing. And I noticed Ron started teaching for Evolution, and at the local level, I wasn't able to run with him anymore. When prior to him teaching for Evo, I could run right with him, and then he went off to teach for Evo, and he came back, and I couldn't run with him anymore. And I for selfish reasons, I said, hey, well, what's this Evolution School thing all about? And do you think I could do that? And Glenn Hernandez told me right out of the box when he was co-driving with me, go help out at local schools, local novice schools. Go help out. And I would tell him, well, Glenn, I'm not good enough. I can't help anybody. I mean, Glenn at the time was beating me by 4 seconds, and I said, I can't help anybody. I don't even know what I'm doing. And he said, no, you can help the novice guy. And, at the time I didn't understand all that. Of course, now looking back, he was totally right. He was right because when you instruct, as you know, as an instructor, when you teach something, it really, really enforces that in you. You become a better instructor by instructing. And I got an opportunity back when Gene Kinzer owned Evolution Schools because of Ron and Glenn and some of the other national level instructors that we have in our region. Floated my name up to Gene, and she brought me on board to start teaching. And I got such an opportunity to teach with guys like Andy Hollis and Tom Kotzian and Jinx Jordan and Junior Johnson. So my skill set was like a force multiplier with these other guys, and I was able to literally go from an average driver to the guy to beat in our region. And we have a jumbo region, so the things that Evolution teaches are foundational things, and I realized fairly quickly that I am good at being an instructor. I think I'm good at tailoring my conversation to whoever my student is. If he's a first-time ever autocrosser, I have a certain way to interact with that person. If he is a multi-time national champion, well, then I can up my game and be more specific with him and more critical with him. I find the better drivers, they want you to tell them what they're doing wrong. They want you to kind of be in their face about it a little bit because they need that challenge to push through. Because I think a lot of times, as you know, probably as an instructor, people who have been doing it a long time, I tend to spend most of my time teaching them to unlearn some of the bad habits they've learned. And it's harder for the guy that has been autocrossing for 10 years to take the evolution school and get the most out of it, because he wants to justify why he's driving a certain way, and it feels uncomfortable when I say to him, I want you to do it this way, even though I'm trying to, teach him that base line of the pyramid, the bottom, the beginnings, and it's hard for a long-time autocrosser to kind of let go of what has made them successful, to take a step back, to ultimately be a better autocrosser long-term, whereas a new novice guy, he is a sponge, right?
Yeah.
He's a sponge. He'll do whatever you say. And women in general, I find, are much better at listening and applying what we teach them than most guys are. Guys are oftentimes, they're filled with so much testosterone and
I think it's fear.
Kill.
I think it's fear.
You think so?
If you I know people shouldn't be braking as late as I do. Probably it scares me that if I do that, like I did experiment for a year or two, that I'll be slow. So really, maybe it's fear for us guys, honestly. Over the women, I even know that from. Too funny when you said women. I did the indoor skydiving once. Who could actually do it? The women right off the bat. And same thing with wakeboarding or water skiing. The women that never did it, they listen, they pop right up. I think us guys really do think we justify what we think we know. And I can see, like you're saying, the more advanced people, we have all these reasons why we think we need to keep doing that.
Yes.
So it's funny, you've coached enough and instructed enough to know that, to be able to see that, hey, it's harder to teach us guys or gals, more guys, I guess, that have been doing it so long. That's a good point. And I always wondered, and fill in on this, I've always wondered how some people have done this for a long, long time, how they don't continue to progress. And it's probably what you're saying. They're not willing to unlearn some things that they're maybe doing.
Yeah. I hear a lot about, my car requires this. And, and they look at, I don't know how to describe it. They really think that the way they're doing it is required because of what they're driving. And often, so many times, that the fundamentals, I always say this to people when they ask me, I'm having a hard time, I can't get it. It's like, go back to the fundamentals. The fundamentals are where it all starts. If you're not doing those right, nothing else matters. If you're not on the line, if you're not driving the car close to the cones, I don't care what kind of shocks you have, what the settings are, what the sway bar is. None of that matters if you're not putting the car where it needs to be. And so much of autocrossing is a mental game, right?
Oh, true.
I think that, and I know you know this, I think that what happens to a lot of crossers, at least in evolution, we do in phase 2, we do a great program where we take the position as an instructor that we're the student, and the student is the instructor, and we have them call out ahead of time where we're at, and it really cements that, you have to be thinking forward, not in the moment, and not worrying, obviously, what's behind us, as the famous race car guy, which I don't know, and a lot of you probably are listening know, said, what is my rearview mirror doesn't matter. I don't know if that was Senna or who that was. But it's true, and in autocrossing, it's really true. I mean, we're so quick to curse ourselves for screwing it up, but so few people talk themselves into doing it right. And I think in evolution, one of the most powerful things I've seen is when students say what they're going to do before we get there, very few students don't actually do what they say they're going to do. But if they can't put the words out, they can't say it. I think as autocrossers, we're all good at self-delusion. We all say we're looking ahead, and we're not. We get lost for a second. We come around a corner, and we go, where do I go now? That should be telling you that you weren't looking ahead, right? And it's so easy to be kind of self-deluding that we're doing everything right, but we're not. And I met a gal who I am dating now, who is a psychologist, and she told me something that made me an aha moment. She says when people are stressed and they're in the fight or flight mode, that the blood actually leaves their cerebral cortex, their frontal lobe, and goes to other places, and it makes it hard for people to have the cognitive power that's required to be, I don't want to say in the moment, to make the right decision. And I think that happens to a lot of autocrossers where short circuit, they know what they need to do, they get to that spot on the course, but because they are so full of adrenaline and expectation, that they literally, their frontal cortex has no blood in it, and they can't make that decision, and they choke. Glenn has a great comment. He says, fear causes hesitation, and hesitation causes your worst fears to come true. And I think that that's very apropos for a lot of autocrossers who know what to do, but have trouble executing that.
Good point. So maybe they can execute it when they're not stressed, so in practice or a local event, but then the blood leaves the frontal cortex at a bigger event. And that's where I so agree. Once you get to a certain level, this is all mental. I swear, it's all mental. And yes, you can still beat me on any given day or any given run, like in Pro Solo, but it's so mental to be able to do it. That's where I watch anybody that does well or is doing well in a Pro Solo finale, especially, like Andy Hollis. I'll sit there and just watching. Like, I'm not like him. I'm not as good as sitting there and just focusing, but I pay attention to those things thinking, what are they doing? What can I emulate or copy that someone else is doing that's having success? And the whole stress thing is a huge part of this. I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, it is. It's really, it's the part of autocrossing that I think we're all challenged with, and no matter how long you've been doing it, it gets back to that, how long does it take me to look ahead? And I said, well, I'll tell you when I figure it out. We're all challenged by that every time we race, and I think, one of the things is really, you can't be a casual autocrosser. For those novices that are listening, if you think you're going to show up at 4 events a year and you're going to go to nationals and beat a guy and get a trophy, you're mistaken. Because in autocrossing, it takes a tremendous amount of repetition to get to the point where you are able to quiet your mind and focus on what you need to do. So when you get to that spot on course that you know is challenging, you can execute. I think that is something that even the very, very best of us are always working on. And I think that, there's a lot of things you can do that. You can meditate. I know you're big into meditating.
I'm big into trying to meditate. Let's get that. I'm not very good. I try a lot.
Well, but I think the fact that you say that is evidence that you really are trying to meditate, because I think anyone who tries to meditate will always feel like I'm not good at it, because it's hard to keep that mind from running all over the place. I think the smarter you are and the more engaged in life you are, it's harder to quiet that mind down. And I think for me, I've gotten really, really good at, when it's go time, to really let everything else go and really focus on the task at hand. And
what is what does that mean though? Focus? Are you thinking about the run? Are you thinking about the certain cones? What does that mean? Focus on this task at hand, this next run.
Well, I think with most autocross courses, there is only 2 or 3 things that really separate everyone from everybody else. Right? Wouldn't you agree that 90% autocross courses, there is like 3 turns that separate the men from the boys, or the girls from the women, however you want to say that.
Or the girls from the guys if they're beating the guys.
Yeah, exactly, right? So you have to understand that I think the more competitive you are, the more you are quick to criticize your own driving. And I think that you need to let all of that go. You need to let go of your time. I know a lot of autocrossers think when they leave the line, and this is something I teach all the time, when you leave the start line, don't think I need to run a 52.7. Don't think that, because that will lead to ruin and disaster. Just know that you need to execute in these couple spots. I need to be really patient, and it's almost always patient. You know, sometimes it's more aggressive, especially with gals. Gals are not pre-programmed with kill, kill, kill like guys are. I think women, a challenge for a lot of women that are listening, and, you know, hey, I'm sure every gal's different, but a lot of times, at least in all my 20 years of instructing, that's the challenge for them, is to push themselves, to scare themselves. But for a lot of guys, it's like, okay, these 3 areas, I got to be spot on. I got to be patient. I got to look to where I need to go. I need to execute perfectly in these spots. And I think, you know, if you're worried about the time, if you're worried about your car settings, is my tires right? Did my co-driver overheat my tires? I think a lot of that, even though you think you're putting that aside, I think that it's really hard for people to find that calmness in the storm, so to speak, and really execute on that first run. I'm a believer that at national championships, your first run has to be so good it can win with that first run. You know, last year at Solo Nationals and STR, I led, a 27-car field at the Pro Solo for the first 2 sessions, because I really think, you know, right out of the box, you got to be fast at the national championship. Same thing. I think that first run I did led the class until the eventual winner got his run. And I think on day 2 it was the same thing. My first run, you have to put down an amazing run on your first run. You can't, at the national level now, not at the local regional level. You can totally build and work up your run to run, and get faster, faster, faster. And honestly, that's what I do most of the time too. But at nationals, I think if you go back and look at my 20 years and you look at my competition there, you'll see my first run and my last run are separated by less than half second most of the time, because I am so focused on that first run has to be amazing right out of the box.
That's interesting. That different. I've done that once where they won first run. I sat on it. Now that frustrates or it seemed to frustrate the heck out of me. Like, how can I not get quicker? But what you were saying about there's only 2 or 3 things to focus on and really be patient on, I think that for me, if I do that, the first one's that good, I need to be patient everywhere and just try to do the same thing and clean up the 1 or 2 things or make sure I'm patient. So that's great advice, that patience is probably the key. I tell a lot of people, you have to be so patient to actually use the brakes and slow down and be tight instead of just going for it. Like the hero run thing I like to bring up has pretty much never, ever, ever, ever worked for me. The wrong mindset of thinking I need a hero run. And the mindset's what brings me back to, you have the mindset of, I'm going to execute on this first run and make it great. Which, if you do that, that probably alleviates a lot of the stress and pressure of, I'm a second off, or I'm 2 seconds off of these people. So that's it. I don't think I've heard anybody else say it, at least not in the way you did, that the first one is so important that you really focus on that one to go out there and nail that. So are you walking a ton to do that, or how are you prepping to make that first run so good? The mental attitude is huge in itself, knowing you can do that.
It is huge. You know, I learned from a local region guy years ago, Stacy Molliker, that he likes to get right out on that first run, just put it down, so that everyone else is immediately driving above, I don't want to say above their skill level, but above. Every single person that comes after you then is trying to match your time, not drive their car. So I think it's super, super important in autocrossing that first run is so good that it puts everybody else back on their heels and everybody's pushing maybe too hard. You know what I'm saying? I mean, the fast guys, like you said, the Hail Mary run, there's a lot of guys out there in autocross that in their local region, people would tell you they're cone crazy. They hit, you know, they hit more cones than anybody does, but they're fast, right?
Yeah.
And that aggression is awesome. I always tell people when I'm instructing that aggression will take you a long way in autocross. It will take you a long way. You can not only win your local regional stuff, but you may even get trophies at the national level. But aggression has a point where it becomes your Achilles heel, because you can't run the ultra-fast run and be clean, or you're worrying about hitting a cone at the same time you're going hard. So your question, like, what do I do to prepare for a run? You know, I'm like a lot of people. I walk the course. I know there's going to be a certain few areas that are going to be the key areas, and those typically are the areas where you have high speed down to low speed, and you need to be a good car position. You know, I always say car position trumps everything. Doesn't matter if I have 20 more horsepower or my car's 50 pounds lighter than my competition. If my car isn't on the line, so to speak, if it isn't close to those cones, it feels fast. I mean, all of us have had the run where they come in and you felt like that was the run. It's like, oh my God, I put it down. And you look at the time, and the time is not faster. But it felt so much faster. Oftentimes that means that they added distance. They waited too long to brake, so they were late to get back on the throttle. And all those things add up to, oh man, I thought that was a run, it wasn't the run. So I think it's a measured approach. It is go as fast as you can, and I like what Junior Johnson says about this, is that you give it up a little earlier than you think you need to, because the benefit is you're back to the throttle before the other guy. And when you drive, I've had a lot of people ride with me, and they say, you know, damn, it felt like you just were coasting around the course. I remember years ago, I was running an MR2. He says, my co-driver at the time said, how can you be beating me? You're coasting everywhere. And it wasn't that I was coasting, it's that I was paying very close attention to where the car was on course, so the line of the car. So I knew that more throttle meant that I would they would push me offline, or more throttle meant that I had to do this massive brake, this Hail Mary brake, as opposed to giving it up a little earlier and coming in with massive control of where the car is, so that I can get back on the gas early. Because really, where it all comes down to in autocrossing, in my opinion, is the first guy back to the throttle on every corner exit is going to win. That's just how it is. And if you are coming in with your hair on fire on every single corner and rolling the dice, you might be fast 1 out of 5 runs, but when you only get 3 runs, you don't have that luxury. You have to be the epitome of balance between aggression and control. And that's what I love about autocross. I love that it is so challenging. You know, when I started instructing for Evolution, the more I learned about autocrossing from these fantastic other instructors, the more I realized I didn't know. And that just has continued. The more I dive into the mental processes of autocross, the more I realize, oh, you know, this is important, this is important, this is important. And when you're timing yourself to the thousandth of a second, you know, it's important what you had for lunch. It's important if you're mad at your girlfriend. It's important if you're mad at your co-driver. It's important if you think that the car isn't as good as it could be, that you could get a better sway bar, that your shocks aren't right, that it's raining, whatever. It's so easy to be distracted, so to speak, of what you need to do.
Yeah, very well said. That there's so many things. That's where I'm starting to think that the focus, once you get to a certain level, it's can you focus? And I wrote down here from Leslie Cohen when if I said the right last name there, when I interviewed her, I remember seeing, and I brought this up to her, in the magazine in Sports Car, she said, I like the challenge of trying to focus for 60 seconds. We don't have to focus forever. It's just, can we be focused and calm throughout the run? Can we be focused on what, like you're saying, car position and balancing the aggression and car position? And the other big key I think you said there, I want to come back to, was more throttle would take me offline. If somebody can get to that point that adding gas or lifting is adjusting their line, I think that's almost the end-all, be-all, not of the braking area, but of any sweep or a transition. That's where you know you're at the maximum level, because all of a sudden the speed, not turning the steering wheel, is affecting your line. That's like one of the ultimates to me. You're on the right line and you're affecting that with the gas pedal or the brake pedal.
Yeah, I call it driving off the front tires. So, if I'm in a sweeper and I'm on I always try to find the limit. Okay, when will my car not react anymore? You can always go faster until your front isn't obeying your steering wheel anymore. And that's your limiter, right? So I call it driving off the front tires. So I will drive as hard as I can until my front tires aren't doing what I want them to do, and that tells me, hey, I'm at the limit right now. Could I give it more gas? I could, but that's going to carry me out a little wider and add a little distance, and I want to make sure I stay tidy. And to my own issue sometimes is that I'm too tidy, right? At Nationals this year, I think I was leading after the first day. I've done that a lot, but and I can't find time, like you said, on the second and third runs, because then I'm too tidy, I'm too cautious. So, like it goes back to what I said, we're all struggling to find that combination, that balance between aggression and control, which is what makes it so fun, so challenging, right?
Yeah, that's where I always say you have to go slower to go faster. For most people that I guess are intermediate to beginner, I feel like that's what I notice when I'm coaching or riding with people. It's like you got to go slower. Whereas something early made me think about, if you have another really good person in the car with you, I've seen lately that if they ride with me and they see my aggression level, they go, oh, that's what I have to do, and they quickly take off time. So that's where...
Right. Especially with the brakes, right?
Yes.
The brakes is what I think a lot of people, a lot of novice autocrossers, they do not use their brakes enough. The first time I think I rode with Glenn Hernandez and he hit the brakes, I'm like, oh, that's what it means to really hit the brakes. Holy crap, And you got to use the brakes just as much as you use the throttle pedal. They're both very intertwined.
Yeah, very, very important. So take us back to when you began. So you're playing video games. You're like, this guy's good. You go off and start autocrossing with him. Evidently, he had been autocrossing for a while, but you mentioned that he could beat you by several seconds. That tells me some stuff about your mindset, that you were okay with that, and then you took that as a challenge. I think some people quit these things like, oh, I'm not fast. I was 10 seconds behind a Miata my first time, which makes total sense now that I know what I know. But to know how fast you are now, I'd like to hear more about how much you autocrossed at first, what you learned. You had a co-driver. I think that's important. Take us back to those first days. Yeah,
so, he would beat me by 4 seconds, like we were talking about. And I think that, for me, when I rode with him, I could see why. He was so trusting of the car. I think one of the first memories for me was we would be sliding towards a cone. Full drift sliding. He would not change the steering wheel. He wouldn't touch the gas pedal. He wouldn't do anything. And I'm in the passenger seat thinking, oh my gosh, he doesn't see that cone. We're about to hit it. And then all of a sudden, amazingly, the car would connect to the ground, get hooked up, and we would miss that cone. And time after time after time, he would do that. He would turn the wheel before we got to the cone we needed to get on, and then the car would tuck in perfectly. So for me, it was awesome to have that guy as an awesome example of exactly, I think what happens with a lot of autocrossers is without instruction, and I always tell this to evolution students, I say, you should pat yourself on the back, especially novice people. for taking this school right now, your beginnings of your autocross career, so that you can learn these habits now before you bad habits set in. And I think that having that fast guy for me I was able to emulate. We're all good monkey see, monkey do. And whether or not you understand what you're doing, it's great to emulate someone who is going faster. And I remember the first day I beat Glenn. It was a Saturday. It was the first day of a national tour at Atwater, California. I could probably draw the course map on a piece of paper right now, and it was 20 years ago. But it was so impactful for me because I beat him for the very first time on a Saturday, and it was just revelation to me. And I think what I find with autocrossers is, again, we get back to that mental aspect of things. When people realize that they can run with the fast guys, that they can run with the Sam Stranos and the Brian Peters and the Andy Hollises and all the other super fast folks out there, Jinx Jordan, and I could just go on forever, right, with all the fast guys in solo. I think once you do that first time, that turns a switch on in your mind that you didn't realize you could run with them. Like you didn't think you were worthy of that, and you would it was always an aspiring goal. But I think when you get there and you beat those guys or you run with those guys, it turns something on in you. And I think that from that moment forward, now you realize I can run with them, and I think that's powerful. When you think you can do something, you can do it.
Yeah.
And if you think you can't do it, you'll never do it.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
We could have another whole session on that right there. And that's where it's too funny. You said the first time you beat Glenn, how many years were you racing once you'd started back with him again?
God, it took me, I want to say 3 years.
And how much were you racing every year?
3 years before.
And how much?
Once I started, I was every event locally.
Which is how many events probably?
25, 30 events a year, easy.
Yeah. That's the other thing is seat time. I didn't get it until I was talking to somebody at Nationals. I'm like, whoa, I've only been like 25 times in 3 years. I was like, I did 25 this year. I'm like, what? So.
Yeah. No, it's all about seat time, and it was funny because Glenn and I were running, it was back in the early days of data acquisition, and we had this thing called the G's Cube, which those old timers out there had probably heard that before. But the G's Cube was, as in lateral G's, G's Cube, was a little software deal, and it was interesting because everyone who is using data now is spoiled. Back in the old days, we didn't have a perfect course map when our data. You had to kind of tweak it to get it even to look something like a course map. But what it was impactful on it was that it showed you when you were throttling and when you were braking and if you were full throttle or not. And I remember Glenn saying to me, and many times he'd say, I'm full throttle through there. And then we'd look at the data and I'd say, oh, you're not full throttle, and right there you did a little lift. And it was interesting to me to use that data to confirm that, okay, he's not full throttle, but he almost is. He's pretty much full throttle, and if he can do it, I can do it. So that kind of that technology and that using that kind of thing helped, elevate my game and to help me equalize him. And I think Glenn, if you talk to him now, would tell you, don't show Kevin anything because he'll be better than you are pretty quickly.
And that's where I think knowing your learning styles is huge. And that's where sometimes just, once again, people riding with me or me riding with them, I've been like, oh my goodness, he didn't lift there very much, or this. There's different ways people learn. Some will look at data or video. A lot of people look at the video. Some people may just be riding with other people that are fast. So I would suggest to people, try all the different things to see what's going to work the best for you. And obviously, were you guys riding with each other also back then?
Yeah, we were. We were co-driving a Porsche 924S, and we were doing Porsche Club. I used to love Porsche Club back in the day because I could win the class with a cone. I was like loving it. I was like, I love this. You know, we all want to win, right? People ask me all the time, like, "Oh, you win all the time." I was like, "No, I've lost more than I've won." That's that's the challenge of all this. It seems like I win all the time, at least locally, regionally, sometimes nationally. You know, but back in the Superstock days, which is other than SSC now, I think Superstock back in the day when it was all Z06s, we had like 60 Z06s. You know, it was a spec class back then, and God, I loved it. I loved that whole competition with that equal playing field, I guess you should say, as equal as they can get.
Yeah, tell us about some of the cars you've driven over the years, what it started with, and what all you've driven as well as liked, or what was different about them.
Yeah, so I started out what I think everyone should, and that is in low horsepower cars. I think that if you start autocrossing in a Z06 or some other high horsepower car, you're kind of doing yourself a disservice a little bit. And what do I mean by that? I mean that if you have a really high horsepower car, you can drive it not perfectly, but still set the fast time in your region, or maybe even top packs, that at the event. But it's maybe not necessarily how you were driving. It's just that you have a really fast car. And I think that when I get asked by people what they should start in, I always say low horsepower, and that's what I started in. I started in a 924S, which is a very low horsepower car, and we ran that, and I went to a Miata in C Street back in the day, 10AE Anniversary Edition Miata, and I think that what driving the lower horsepower cars, what it teaches you is momentum, which is really important, right? Momentum, carrying that speed, not over braking, getting everything out of the car. And then the line. I think the line is the lower horsepower car you have, the more the line becomes so important. And then once you've mastered that, if there is such a thing as mastering anything, I think then you transition to that higher horsepower car with more potential, and then you will be a better, much, much better driver. And that's what I had an opportunity to do. I drove a 924S. I drove an MR2. I drove a Mazda Miata for the first maybe 10 years of autocrossing. Then I got an opportunity by a local guy said, "Hey, drive my Corvette Z06 with me." And although that took a little bit of transition for me to realize that throttle pedal now has an effect on the car. Every car prior to that, I put the throttle down, didn't change how the car handled. But the Z06, when I put my throttle down, now that's changing how the car's handling. And it really almost, I like to say, it changed autocross for me when I went to a much higher horsepower car. It changed the sport almost for me. And I think that, driving a Z06 and driving higher horsepower cars becomes a much, much higher skill set is required. Much more patience on the throttle, and much more respect for carrying the speed. I think a lot of guys, I knew when I was running S Superstock back in the days, I was one of the top. I didn't think I ever won a national championship, but I was more than a couple years, I was the fastest Corvette on the course. But I just didn't beat out the Porsche. The GT3 was let in, the Lotuses were let in. But I guess the reason I speak that because the Corvette requires so much more, or any high horsepower car requires so much more patience. But if you don't have the line and carry momentum, it doesn't matter if you have a 1,000 horsepower car, if you can't carry the momentum, if you shut it down in the corner, turn the wheel, and then floor it again, and you're driving point to point, you will not win, no matter how much horsepower you have. You have to carry the momentum and use the highest lateral G that car can give you if you're going to win at the national level. So I've had an opportunity to drive just about everything there is. I mean, I've driven front drive. I drove a Chevy Cobalt, turbo Cobalt for a couple of years, and it did well at D-Stock against the all-wheel drive WRXs and MR2s. I think when I drove in back in E-Stock days, I was one of the guys to beat in E-Stock. So I think the more cars, and I always say this to local region folks, the more cars you drive, the better driver you're going to be. And that is because the more cars you drive, the more you realize that there's a certain rule set with autocrossing, and that transfers from low horsepower to high horsepower to front drive to rear drive to all-wheel drive, and that are the fundamentals. And I think the more cars you drive, the more you realize you need to focus on the fundamentals. I mean, why does an evolution instructor, well, how are they able to jump in your car that they've never driven before and get literally 90% or more out of that car and beat you in it in a car they've never driven? Because they've gotten to the point in their skill sets that they are really focusing on the fundamentals. And I think that the fundamentals are 90% of any autocross. It's the last 10%, 5%, 6% that is car-specific, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does. And something you mentioned about slower cars at first, I think you have more time to know you're on that line, the correct line. You have more time to see what's coming up. And what else did I always hear? That you should always start in those before you get to the Corvette anyway. So what, Miata S2000 Corvette is if you want to go that route. And I'm still kicking myself for never being in a Miata. Like thinking, why would anybody drive a Miata? And yet they beat me by 10 seconds the first day. But the fact that also if you kill your momentum, it takes you a while. You have a while to think about, oh yeah, that wasn't so good. Because now I'm like, lug. So I like that you brought that up, that you advise, I do it as well, start in the slower cars. Unless you're just gifted or you go-karted a lot, give yourself more of a chance, I think, to be a student, to suck up and learn more.
Yeah, because in the Mazda Miata, if you're late to the throttle, you know it. You pay for it. You are pounding the wheel and going go because you were half a second late to adding that throttle, and so I've driven just about everything there is to drive. I really can't think of. I mean, I'm running an STR S2000 right now. My autocross career, you could say to my detriment, maybe, I've always chosen the hardest classes to run in. I look and I want the most talent, the most subscription class. That's where I want to run. I don't want to run a class where I would rather lose to somebody than win against nobody, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, you're up for the challenge. You definitely, especially if right off the bat you were, okay, with the video games, you're right there with Glenn, but then to realize that he is that much faster and you stuck with it, that tells you that you also had the belief, somehow upbringing something, hey, if he can do it, I can do it. That's something I apply to life.
People, yes, exactly. I tell people that in autocross specifically, if you don't get on yourself that you're not good. If for all the novices that are listening, and you don't think you're the guy, you don't think you're as good as the fast guys in your region, if you haven't really given it your all, if you haven't gone to every local event and national event for 2 years straight, because I really think it takes 2 years before you're going to know if you're any good at this sport. I think that it is so multi-level challenging that if you don't put at least 2 years of every autocross you can possibly go to, you'd say to yourself, you can't do this, then you're just not giving yourself the chance, because I think it takes at least 2 years of solid effort to know if you're even good at it. Because I think it's that challenging. It's so easy to do. Everyone can participate. But to really get at the pointy end of the spear, it's going to take you some time. You're going to have to put the effort in and go before you know if you're even good. So don't sell yourself short, all you novices out there. keep at it. Keep talking to the fast guys. Keep riding with the fast guys. Let the fast guys drive your car, and keep learning. You know, I can tell you, as a guy that's been there and done that, I'm still open to learning. I'm still learning new things. I'm still bringing in new techniques into my driving.
Yeah, no kidding. And as you mentioned, being able to beat Glenn, who was, I don't know how he was paxing back in the day, but I went against him in D-Stock back in the day, because I brought an Audi out, and then I brought a Type R to the first Pro Solo I went to, and it was he and Ron Bauer. I'm trying to think who else. I don't think you were in the class then. Kevin Youngers locally. And as you said, building confidence. We're picking on Glenn so I get on the podcast is what I keep thinking about as I thought about this. So this is the Pro Solo I've been autocrossing. I wasn't quick nearly as fast as you were, and as you were saying these things, I think it's how much seat time. I just didn't get but 7 or 8 events a year until I realized, oh my goodness, someone did 25. I went to that Pro Solo as a supposedly rookie, although I didn't check that box. I didn't think I was a rookie. And I beat all those guys by a smidgen, and I swear it's because I slowed down to tighten up my line at the finish. I was like, oh, you actually remember to slow down and tighten your line. And like you're saying, that I think a lot of us are confident coming in, like, oh, we can do this or we'll figure this out. But then if you actually do that, you're like, oh my goodness, I can compete with these people. And I want to circle back to now, I swear so much of this is the mental side of things. And yet my wife's kind of like a psychologist. Maybe we need to sit down and talk more about this. It's just so key to get that seat time like you're saying. And I love the 2-year aspect you brought up. Go hard at this thing for 2 years. I'm sure you'd recommend take Evo schools as soon as you can and as many schools as you can, because the seat time is so much more there that you can get 10 events or 20 events in one day of practice. And one thing we're doing here that we're actively trying to do is just rent out the tracks or the lots to get more practice.
Yes.
And
and I always say this, practice is okay, but perfect practice is better.
Oh, good.
You a lot of times people get out there and it's a practice and they're lackadaisical. They like hit cones and they overdrive and they think, oh, it's just a practice. I'm just practicing. But, honestly, if you want to be perfect at the national level with 3 runs, that's it. With I think STR had 60 drivers last year, maybe more. You every single run matters. So if you practice with the idea of it's a practice, whatever, I'm just driving hard, that's not a good approach. You really have to have perfect practice to get perfect.
That's true, and I
think that's.
And what we've been talking about, I think the mental side of that's so key, and I can apply that to, like, for us, we go to BMW Club or Porsche events, you get like twice as many runs. And me with the wrong attitude, when we come to the afternoon runs, I'd be slower. I'd be like, oh, I'd hate that they only count the afternoon runs. Finally, I realized, hey, you love Pro Solo. Like, as much as anything, you want to dominate there. This is like a Pro Solo. You have to focus again for the next batch. And I think for me, it was so mental of, I've already done this course, why'd I have to do it again? Because it's missing part of the Pro Solo, but in reality, it's still that mental focus and control to be able to say, hey, you have to go out and execute again, just like for a practice, because I found myself overdriving, like at the test course at Nationals.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think that's bad because you're out there and you'll see people out there hitting cones like crazy. No, you can't do that. And tell me what you guys do for your region, but here, if you're in X class, you only count your 3 runs anyway. Other people are counting 5 and 6 and 7 runs, and we're going on 3 against their 5 and 6 and 7 because we know that's what really matters when it comes down to any tour or nationals.
Yeah. That's been a huge debate in our region, and for the last, I don't know, I think now we've got it settled, but there was a point in when there was a certain amount of folks in our region that really felt that, hey, and I know Oregon region is like this to this day, we only want to count for pro classes or PAX classes, we only want to count first 3 runs, and we don't want to count 5 runs if that's the case for the day. And, I think that on the surface has some effect, but I think it gets back to the mental aspect of things that only counting the first 3 runs is great, right? I mean, that's what the national level does. That's the sport we're really in. I think Greg Ford all years ago told me that, well, if you're counting more than 3 runs, you can call it autocross, or I don't know what you're calling it, but that's not autocross. He said basically it's like if you count more than 3 runs, it's not autocross. So there's an argument to that, but I don't know if that is helpful to the drivers. I think the argument I heard in our region at least was that 3 runs will make our region better, and I think that honestly, when you look at double drivers, the second driver, as we all know, he doesn't start out with warm tires, right? He's got to go out and warm the tires for me. So he's already throwing 1 run away, and now I'm really only giving him 2 runs to get her done. And in our region, my big beef with, and we tried the only 3 runs count, and I looked at it as though I want to run against all the fast guys, and I want them all to have an equal opportunity to beat me. And if you're running a 2-driver car and it's maybe a prepared car, that first run for that guy is forget it.
Yeah,
right?
That's when they need to be nice. They need to have a co-driver.
They need to have a co-driver, right? But then that penalizes, if you're only running 3 runs, that penalizes that co-driver. Now, typically, co-drivers, one's faster, one's slower. Oftentimes, you'll find that that's why they're co-driving. But, in a perfect world, I want everybody that I beat to have an equal opportunity to beat me.
Yeah, that's because you're a nice guy, Kevin.
I'm not a big fan of 3 runs. Yeah, I want the guy running the prepared car to have warm Hoosiers, and I want to beat him too. So I'm not super all about the 3 run only count kind of program at the regional level. But that's me. I want if I could tax everybody, I'd tax everybody.
Yeah, that's your competitiveness. I think for some of these people that haven't gone to the larger events or they want to do well there, they need to be in that mindset of it's only 3, and they need to be recognizing if it takes them 4 and 5 and 6 runs to get faster, what's going on there? Are they looking at data in between? What's really clicking? Because you don't get that unless it's a pro solo. You only get 3. That's it. I mean, I'm still trying to figure this out myself, but I've just seen that some people are like, oh, look, I'm close to you. I'm like, yeah, in 4 and 5 and 6 runs. And you just don't get that. I think there are some people that are fast locally or seem fast. They may go to nationals and not do well. They may have the wrong mindset, but they're like, oh, all of a sudden, I really have to focus on these 3, and that's it. So it's almost like even if you count more than 3 locally, see what happens. See how fast Kevin is compared to you after 3 runs. And if you're beating him after 3, you go and say, too bad, Kevin. I wouldn't really count that 4th one.
Right, exactly. And that's, it factors in. If you've got, if you have the mindset that only 3 count, then you drive a certain way. But it goes back to what I always say. It's easier to dial back than it is to speed up. So start off crazy fast, give it all you've got, and it's easier to dial back than it is to speed up.
Good point. So, and that's where probably knowing yourself once again of what you need and what you're doing. I just think I keep a lot of this podcasts and the videos I put up are how can we help people get faster at something we're spending so much time and effort doing. And I'm coming down to, like I hear on the diets and everything else, it's a diet of one. You have to know yourself, and I think that's the same in this. Some of us are really good at mental things, and some of us are really good at something other aspect of it. And how do we figure out if you want to get better and you're not on the pointy end or closer where you want to be, what is it you're missing? There's something I keep thinking people are missing. It's either their car's not in the right place, they're not slowing down enough. It doesn't seem like we have that many things to do when we have a steering wheel, a gas pedal, and a brake pedal. I'm like, that's what I told myself when I got in the sport. I'm like, they beat me by 10 seconds, and there's only 3 things we can do here. I've got to be able to figure this out.
Yeah, I mean, you could talk autocross theory, course design, or course, theory, like wider line but more speed, tighter line but less distance, and you're slower. I mean, those arguments go on forever, right? I mean, it's I don't think that'll ever change the whole, higher speed, wider line, tighter line, slower speed. I mean, I think those are. And I think what's interesting is, you could look at, you and I could jump in the same car, and then log every input we put into that car. But I can tell you, when we get to the finish line, you and I are going to be very close together.
Yeah.
Even though we both drove differently. So autocross is all about give and take. It's give a little here, take a little there, and that's what makes it interesting, right? A lot of people are left foot breakers, and a lot of people aren't left foot breakers. I am not a left foot breaker. I am a right foot, and like we talk about in evolution, there's a lot of national champions that are both. It's pretty mixed.
Yeah.
Which one's better? I personally fall on the side of the fence that if you're a left foot breaker, that left foot starts to become a crutch. What I call it, a crutch. And what do I mean by that, a crutch? I mean that if you come into the corner with too much speed, the left foot breaker can quickly scrub that speed off, right?
Yep.
The right foot breaker, he learns to not come into that corner with that much speed, right?
That makes
So
sense. Okay, I get.
that.
Yeah, totally. I think that's the difference of the braking earlier and smoother, right foot braking.
Yeah, so it's a trade-off, right? I can tell you how many left foot breakers I see go through a slalom, and I see the brake lights coming on, and I ask them, "Hey, you were all over the brakes in the slalom. What's up?" He goes, "Oh, I wasn't touching the brake in there." I'm like, "Well, but your brake lights came on," and like, "Oh, well, I wasn't touching the brake." It's like, we're timing this to the thousandth of a second, so if your brake lights came on, you were touching the brakes. So I think what happens is left foot breakers start to kind of use their left foot as a crutch for their bad decisions, if that makes any sense.
Well,
right?
it's a safety valve in my mind that I can be
Safety
too
valve.
fast, and I can just apply a
Yeah.
little bit of left, and it feels like the car sucks down and sticks.
Yes.
I think
Right.
of it as, yes, it may be a crutch, but I also think of it as I can be more on the knife's edge because I know I have that, and I don't have to lift to get to the brake with the right foot, although I know some of you are so fast with that, it's insane, like David Valve. I'm like, how's your foot move that fast? So I feel like I can really, whereas you said Glenn would have the car sliding and just be patient, let it catch, I feel like I can get right on the edge and just touch that brake a little bit, like Bob Tennell in the slalom. He touches the brakes every single slalom cone. I was like,
Right.
what? That's what, like you're saying, we may drive totally different, yet if you're against some of the national champion or somebody that's up in that area, you're going to be just as quick. It's just you're going to be slightly different probably on what you're doing. That's what's also so fascinating about this.
Yeah, I agree. It's fascinating.
And I got to always say this because being a left foot breaker, although I keep trying to not do it as much, most people should probably never try to do that now in these newer cars because of all the issues. And I can't wait to see driving more of the BRZs and FRSs how much of an issue or not an issue that is. So far, it's not been an issue. But if it is, it may be something I have to give up in a newer car. That whereas in these older Civics with no anti-lock brakes and stuff, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, I mean, it's, like I tell people, a left foot brake, we're timing it to the thousandth of a second. So, if you've gotten in the habit of that left foot saving you when you come in too hot or settling the car, if you want to say that, to slow it down, I oftentimes wonder, this is by a few thousandth of a second,
Yeah.
was it your left foot braking? And, and there's people on both sides. Again, there's no right or no wrong, just like we teach with evolution. There's no right or wrong. We're not trying to say, oh, you got to be a left foot breaker. Oh, you can't left foot brake. I mean, everyone's got their own technique, and that's what makes it so fascinating. Like you said, I agree. I mean, Ron Bauer and I we are each other's benchmarks. Ron never beats me by more than a couple tenths. I never beat him by more than a couple tenths. We are awesome for each other because we always let each other know if we're off our game. If Ron beats me more than a half a second, well, I wasn't on my game that day. If I beat him by more than half a second, then he wasn't on his game. But he's a left foot breaker. I'm a right foot breaker. So,
and would you compare against
amazing.
him, even when he's not in the class? Could you, with Index or PAX, know? Was that another way you could gauge, just for people that don't have somebody in their class?
Yes, if you're talking Ron and I with Paxton, yeah. I mean, Rick Ruth, shout out to Rick Ruth. If you're listening, Rick, thank you so much for what you have brought to autocross. You have contributed so much to autocrossing because paxing allows the slow car to race with the fast cars. And I think without paxing, without having that ability, I don't think the sport would be as popular as it is, honestly. I just don't think that would be the case, because how do you compare yourself with all the other drivers? I know Ron Bauer's good. I know Glenn's good. I know the other fast guys in our region that are really good, and that PAX number allows me to compare myself against those guys. When I do a local region event, I'm not racing the guys in PAX. I'm racing all 200 people. Yeah. You know, I want to compare myself against everybody. So without that PAX multiplier, and yeah, you can argue, oh, it's calculator racing, and it is, and sometimes the PAXs aren't correct, as in SSC right now. But there is no other way to kind of conglomerate all of us together and give some kind of semblance of who's the best driver that day. And I think PAX, I can tell you in our region, we're PAX nuts in our region. Oh my gosh, we've combined a lot of the SCCA classes together, where 3 or 4 or 5 classes all run together, so that we have some kind of a certain level of participation. So
that's great, because some are so close in here, right? In PAX that they're Good point.
Exactly. So we have grouped cars together, and B stock and East and A Street, and run together, and E Street, D stock may run together as groups of cars, and we use PAX. We're heavily vested in the PAX system in our local region, and I think that allows. It really shows how good that works when you've got drivers that in all different classes are separated by tenths of seconds. When you've got 10 really good drivers and we're all separated by a tenth of a second, over the 20 years of racing, from my experience, you see that everyone stacks up a certain way. So if the guy that's usually fifth is third or second or wins, hey, he had a fantastic day, because typically he's the third or fourth guy, know. And PAX allows us all to run. The fast cars can run against the slow cars. And I just think that brings so much to the sport of autocrossing that I don't think Rick Ruth gets nearly enough credit for what he has brought to the sport.
Yeah, I know I've, over all the years, looked at where I was overall and just would compare, hey, am I going up, am I going down, where am I at? And you kind of have to readjust it every year for PAX if your PAX changed that much, that's for sure. Like, there's some years I knew, okay, I'd won here locally once overall. And like the next year or two, at some point there, I was like, oh, there's no way. PAX worked out well for me, and now it doesn't. So it all depends on where you're at. But at least if you don't have a big class or something, you can look at where you're stacked up overall and see how many points you're averaging, if you're like we are, or what number are you in the top 20, top 30, 30 to 40. That's another way to gauge, although I really like what you said. You guys have combined some classes so you have more people there. Because I think that also helps us once you engage back and forth and have some camaraderie, as well as just seeing what else is going on, maybe riding in some different cars as well.
Yeah, I think that for our region, that's pretty. We've been doing that for years and years now, where we combine a bunch of SCCA classes together, and then we PAX them. And yeah, I mean, some years the PAXs, there's some cars that are overdogs. I mean, last year F Street was a pretty easy PAX. This year, the Type R Civic in B Street is an overdog. I mean, you drive that car right now with the index it's got right now, and you're going to be crushing everybody. SSC, as an example, is if you're going to run that index right now as it is, then I don't care how fast you are, you're probably not going to be in the top fast guys in that with that index. And what I always say with people that complain about that is, it takes a certain amount of data. Rick's, he's not pulling these numbers out of thin air. He's a statistician, and he's doing some serious number crunching. I know he looks at at least 5 or 6 regions around the country and compares the results to all those regions, and he comes up with a multiplier that he thinks is fair. And even as good as he is and as much hard work as he puts into it, sometimes the PAX is off for a year, but typically that gets fixed the next year. And if it doesn't get fixed next year, it gets fixed by the third year. You know, STR is an example. That's a real index. STR that's a real index because that class hasn't changed for a long time. So he's able to conglomerate all those results and come up with a pretty damn good index. And to my chagrin, it's tough index sometimes. But it is what it is, and I don't know of any other way that we can quantify someone's driving ability other than using a system like that. I mean, I just think that whether it's RTP or that is what we have to. That's our tool that we have, and we just have to live with the benefits and when it's not perfect for us, and that's the way it is.
And Howard can change it for the Pro
eventually.
And Howard can change it for the Pro Solo anyway, right, Howard? You can have it if we go to bump class. Although hopefully SSC will be so strong everywhere, no bump class will necessary, then it won't matter. PAX only matters if you don't have a class.
It's super challenging because we all know as autocrossers, it's not the car, it's the driver, right? So. Yeah. If you've got a bunch of people in class, they all think, I'm the man, my index is wrong. It's like, well, yeah, you don't have Brian Peters driving that car. You don't have Tim Strano driving that car. Or you don't have, some of these other fast guys driving the car. And you are, gauging your performance on what you could do, not what a really, really good driver can do. So that's why
with a prep car.
PAX is always evolving and challenging. And when it comes to Howard, I don't really, and I may be wrong, and I don't know if Howard ever listened to this. I know that he said to me he's never watched one of my live streams of the SCCA Solo when I was live streaming all that stuff. He told me one time he had never watched a single one. So he may never listen to your podcast. But I don't know if he is really doing the work that Rick Ruth does. I don't know if he's really... Is he a statistician? Is that his...
Or is he asking Rick or somebody like, hey, what can we do here since this class has...
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to say he's pulling it out of his backside, but I don't really know if he's doing what Rick's doing, which is cataloging hundreds of events per year and multiple regions, and that's how Rick gets his numbers. I don't know if Howard is doing that same diligence when it comes to the index, honestly.
Yeah, I have no clue either. Oh, I want to get into, so this last year at Nationals, you had a VR headset and a VR camera, which I now own one. I need to actually download that and upload that from a race recently. So how much do you use video in the past, or what are you doing between runs? And then we'll get into this actual last year with the VR.
So what? I'm sorry.
Oh, so between runs, especially if you co-driver days, what's your mindset? Are you looking at data? Are you looking at video? What are you doing in between runs at events, especially big events?
Exactly. So I think one thing is important that you get a fairly decent co-driver. Data in general generally only helps the slower driver, honestly. And so if you have a co-driver that is way less than you, then you're not going to get a huge amount of feedback from the data. Because unfortunately they aren't as good as you. So if your co-driver is not beating you in some portions of the course, then data is not going to be a huge help with the slower co-driver. Now, can you look? Can you compare your own runs from run to run? You can, and I've been using data for over 10 years. Can I find spots where I could have done better because I noticed a previous run or a run after
was better. One of my 3 runs or 4 runs or 5 runs or whatever it is was better than another run, and I can derive some improvement from that. The real improvement from data is that you have someone who's just as good as you are, and by having someone as good as you are, they are going to drive an area that better than you, and that is going to be. I have a local guy named Fast Mike Lilliard, who has been my co-driver for many years, and he's not a guy that travels very much, but he is a very cerebral, intelligent, smart autocrosser, and he's very, very good. And many times I can see on the data where he is charging harder than I am, especially back when we used to co-drive together. He would come out of the gate like on fire, or I would be consistent everywhere and oftentimes beat him at the end. He had moments in the run where he was more aggressive, or he had a tighter line, or he was earlier on the throttle, and I could use that data, and I could go faster. I remember, like I said, back in the old days with G's Cube, you could tweak that, and you could see what the other driver was doing, if he was on a gas or brake. And now I helped Max Q, for those folks that have spent a little time on autocross, remember Max Q data. I met him, and he was willing to start modifying his computer program, his software, to really start to focus on autocrossing. And I thought to myself when I first started using Max Q, oh my God, this is like cheating. Like, this isn't fair for the people that are using this, because I can use my fast co-driver, in that case Fast Mike Lilliard, and I can see where Fast Mike is faster than me. And all I need to do, now that I can actually with the data pinpoint, okay, he's quicker here, he's quicker here, he's quicker here, and I could immediately up my game in those areas and immediately catch right back up or go faster than he was because of that data. So I think data has become, like I said back with Max Q, I felt at that time like almost guilty because some people didn't have it. I thought to myself, this will become like high-tech shocks are, like good sway bars are. This will become a required thing in autocross, and now we have SoloStorm. And I'm sure there's lots of people out there listening that use SoloStorm, and that is an amazing software suite that picked up right where Max Q left off and has taken it to that next level. So there are, when you're talking about between run to run, you can quickly look down at your data stream there with SoloStorm and say, okay, here, I am not as fast as my co-driver. Or in the case of SoloStorm, I look at all that, I carried too much distance. I was too wide on this corner. And look, when I'm in tighter, although it didn't feel faster to what I call my butt dynamometer, I think a lot of people drive. If you've ever run an autocross course and you come in and you thought that was the run and you look at the time and it wasn't the run, I guarantee you if you look back in the data, it's because you overdrove. You added distance. And it felt fast, but we're not very good at perceiving distance. The data, though, will show you that you added distance on there. So you can use that data from run to run with a good co-driver to really, really go faster. So, I'll take a brief look. I typically look at speed in general with the data. I look at sometimes if I'm tighter or wider on a line. And then video. You talked about the video. I think that the VR is going to be the new thing in solo. I thought about it a couple of years ago before the technology actually got to the point where it was affordable, that's going to be a huge advantage because we are such a visual, as human beings, we are so visual. You could tell me that I'm late on the throttle on the data. You can tell me that I was too wide till you're blue in the face. But I may not recognize that until I actually see the data. I see the video, I should say. and the video shows me, oh, clearly I'm not too wide, or I'm nowhere near that cone. Video has that ability, and I think there's some folks in autocross that are all about the video. They're all video, right?
Oh yeah, definitely.
And I think, I can't remember his name right now, but I know he is big on video. That's all they use is video. His husband, wife.
Oh, Jeff Wong?
Autocross.
Nicole?
What's that?
Yeah, Jeff and Nicole
Who?
pretty much are exclusively video over data even.
Yeah, there are a lot of people that just pure video. I don't want to look at the data. I don't care. I want to see how far am I off that cone, and I totally hear them. It's totally true. We're in the game where 3 or 4 inches off the cone matters at the pointy end of the spear. So if you want to get into the VR, I always felt that I see so many people between runs watching the video, and up until recently, you can only see whatever the camera can see. And in autocrossing, at least for evolution, I can't tell you how many times I'm trying to break people from what I call street driving habits, and that is they only want to look out the front window. They literally are uncomfortable when they look out the passenger window or the driver's window. They want to look at the whole autocross course through that front window. And that is the kind of the limitation we've had for years and years and years with video, is that you can only see what the camera sees. So, in autocross, when you come into the corner, most cameras cannot see where you're going. They can see where you are, but not where you're going to. So I thought to myself a couple of years ago that, boy, this VR thing, that would be amazing, because as I showed you at Nationals last year, when you can turn your head, and so you've got a static video. Some people don't understand how this VR is revolutionary. They think to themselves, well, I've watched a video, that's not a big deal, and what does that matter, and how's that important? With VR, you have this static video, but when you turn your head, you can look what typically would not be visible in most cameras. You can look into the corner, and you can try to pick up that cone, right? Because that's so important with autocrossing, is where is that next cone? And with the VR, you're able to break free from the confines of that frame that you normally would look at, and you can look past that. You can truly look into the corner. So what I call image rehearsal is that between run to run now, I can play the video of my co-driver on his first run, and I can start practicing before I've even run. I can start practicing to look for that cone, that next cone in the corner, which typically would not be visible on the video. The video allows you, I'm this close to the cone, I'm not that close to the cone, right? That's what most video information is giving you, how close you are or not close to the cone. But with VR
if you have a really good camera angle,
right.
Otherwise you can't even see that. But yeah, go ahead.
Right. With VR now, I can look into the corner. I can turn my head, which is physically replicating what I'm doing in the car. I'm turning my head into the video. It's a static video, but I can now look, because of virtual reality, VR, I can look into the corner, I can turn my head, and as I turn my head, I can look for that cone out there. And I think the impact of that is and I really believe this, I think it is as revolutionary as data was when we first started using data in autocrossing. I think virtual reality and using a headset and VR 360 cameras are at that same epoch in driver aids, where now we can look into the corner and I can practice looking for that next cone before I'm through the corner. And I think prior to this, there's no way to do that. And I think I gave you an opportunity, and I'd love to hear what you think of it, because you got an opportunity. I came to you specifically to show you this because I thought it's such a revolutionary thing, and no one at the time last year when I did it, I don't think anybody was using VR and autocross like I think it's going to be going forward. I think VR will be just as important as data is, which is just as important as shocks are, as sway bars are, as tires are, as setup is. I think the level of competition and I think we all would agree over the last 10 or 20 years that autocrossing has become, the people that are doing it have become so good. I think that the skill levels, let's say 20 years ago, my skill level 20 years ago, I would have crushed everybody on autocrossing. I would have been nobody would have beat me. But now, because of data and because of video and because of these new technologies, it has leveled the playing field for so many people. Everyone has gotten so good at it. And I think this VR revolution is going to be the next thing. I would not be surprised at all if next year, it's not just me using VR, it's the whole grid. Half the grid is using VR, right? That's where we're headed. Now, I'd love to hear your take on it, because I know when I presented it to you, you had never seen anything like that. So what did you get from it, Kinch?
Yeah, no, what I like, and I think everybody can take from this, especially if you want to learn, like you're saying, turn your head to look out the other windows. I do that. In a 180, I'm turning to see where that cone's at, even just a glance at it to come back. That's what I noticed. So what I love about the Civic having a sunroof is I'd always put my camera there so I could see what my hands and head were doing. With VR, as I did a practice run of Steven's run, I could totally turn my head like I need to in the car, like for practice, if people aren't turning their head, they don't look ahead. I could turn my head to see where I was going. So I think it's the best practice. It's not like looking at a video game or playing where you're just out the front windshield. Hey, look, we're going left over there next. Turn your head. And you could even look down and see if Steven was turning his head, or you could see if I was turning my head. That was the key. And also I could look straight down and go, what is Steven doing? Did he correct right there? Like, it's all of a sudden you can focus on so many different aspects and areas. And as you pointed out, you can see more than you could really see if you're close to the cones, as well as was the driver looking ahead at all? And can I just, even on the bad, so on his first run, he was wide somewhere. And I was like, I need to be over there because I felt like I was in the car. And I had my head turned. So that's where it was, I forget the words you just used, but it was more real life. It was like getting another run.
Yeah, I've coined the term image rehearsal, because you are literally physically doing what you need to do in the car when you're reviewing the video, because you turn your head with the virtual reality and the view changes. You look into the corner for the first time and you can pick out that cone. I mean, at Nationals, I was fast right out of the box. And I attribute some of that to the fact that my co-driver went out and ran the course. I put on the virtual reality glasses, and instead of just watching his video, I was in the car. I was looking around. If I wanted to look at a course worker as I drove by him, I could. If I wanted to turn around and look behind the car, I could see that. With 360 cameras now, not only can I see ahead of where I'm going and where I want to go, but I can look back and see my hands on the wheel. I can see everything. So I think the next generation, the next wave of autocrossing data is going to be this virtual reality. I think you're going to see because we all see in Grid. Everyone's reviewing their video now, right? At first it was. Oh yeah, if we can. First it was data.
Can we stream it? Hey, let's stream this on Twitch, or we'll start our own thing. And for 50 cents, you can watch my run. you can download it and do it. Hey, I'll even try to talk you through it if the car's quiet enough.
Right, exactly right. So I think that's for me, run to run, the next to data, and I've been using data for a good 15 years back in J's Cube days. I think that this new VR, and I think I heard from someone when I think Solo Matters posted a picture of you or me, one of us, with our headset on, right? And I think someone told me that when that got posted, people immediately said, "Oh, we gotta ban that. That's not fair," right? And I think, I think that is an example of how powerful it is, because I think that people immediately, unconsciously realized how much of an advantage that is. And really, the system I used at Nationals last year was under $200. The camera and the viewer, because you use your cell phone, was under $200. So really, it's not a cost thing. It's just the evolution of our sport, and I really think that that's going to be a big thing in the future. Like I hope live streaming the event is a big thing in the future. I mean, I really hope that at some point SCCA realizes that, hey, we should do this. We can. It's easy. We should do it.
And it'll keep me from losing runs, although I've learned that lesson. I'm not sure if you heard me say, but I was at the Pro last year in California, and I started a live stream on Facebook, and I promptly kept doing it so long that my class started running. So it'd be great if somebody was doing that so I didn't feel like I should do that. I couldn't believe, and there's my class. And I just kept recording and watching a few of the people go through. And if any of y'all do that, if you see your class running, you can get 2 provisional runs, at least last year. They don't count, but at least you can go practice the course somewhere. Yeah, and don't do that on Sunday. It kind of really cuts your chances if you're not winning by a lot.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, that's what I do between runs. I try to really just find a few little bits of data. Honestly, I think that you should have your game plan on your first run. You should already have your game plan. You should know what you need to do. You should have talked to your other autocrossers. You should have formulated what you're going to do, and you should know what you need to do on your first run. And I think everything from your first run to your last run is just little bits of information, little bits of help, because we've all walked a course and thought, oh, this is going to be painful, and then it isn't. And we've all thought, oh, this is going to be easy, and it isn't. So you have to be ready to change your game plan after first runs, but I really think you need to come to the table prepared, and that video and data only adds a little bit to what you need to do. It's not going to make you from last place to first place because you have the latest, greatest video and VR system going.
And probably, especially if you don't either have the focus to be able to implement it or know what to notice to implement. Whereas some people seem really good. You just tell them what to do and they'll go out there and execute. Some people maybe like you, visual. If they can see it, they can repeat it. Some people I think need to sit in the car and feel it. So that's where I wonder. I know some people like Ron Williams, he doesn't have data. He doesn't do video. And he's like, and for people like that, they probably wish none of us could do any of that. And that's where it's so amazing how different we all are and how some of us can still be fast with and without. So that's where I wonder on the VR side, I think the visual people really get more out of it. And I think of it as a test. Once again, if you know what to look for and watch, you can get extra runs in basically, and or watch the person that's faster to see what they're doing. And I also can see sitting in your car, put it on jack stand so you can turn the steering wheel or what have you, and put on your VR headset and drive the course. Like really be on the steering wheel and press the gas pedal. And especially if it's a good run from somebody, that's going to be, I think, the real magic if you can get somebody at Nationals to, hey, can I put a camera on your car? And then you can go home and run it. Because some people do lots of that, whereas I don't walk the course a lot because for some weird reason I feel like I look further ahead if I don't have it 1,000% memorized. If I still have a little bit like, oh, I think that's the right place to be, but I'll have to look ahead to find it. So it's going to be interesting to see how we can use this and how much of a benefit is it for some of us, or is it the top people get better because of it, or is it really the other people? I keep thinking my guess is if you're not as fast, you're going to be able to practice better habits without being in the car. And I think it's turning your head to look ahead, like you were looking out the side windows. I love that. You need to turn your helmet enough to go, I'm going way over there. And it's just a quick glance, and it comes back and glance ahead again. Huge.
Yeah, I think it is huge. It's the physical act of looking for that next cone, looking into the corner, looking for your next cone. I can tell you locally, regionally, and even at the national level, but not national championships, I don't use data and video that much. I've been doing this for so long. I know where I screwed up. I know what I could do better. I don't necessarily need that data to tell me where I wasn't good on the course. It's really, for me, only at the really pointy end of the spear, national championships or something, that I will resort to kind of, the all-in data with the video and the Solo Storm and Mike Marich's amazing software with that Solo Storm. But I think that, for me, walking the course and getting a game plan is the most important thing. I have gotten to the point where I'm a big visualizer, so I will walk the course, and after I'm done, I will close my eyes and I will run the course, and I will be very cognizant of everything on the course. I will use landmarks in the distance to line up, like whether it's an outhouse on the course, or it's a mountain range, or it's an office building, or it's something that I see in the distance. When I do my visual rehearsal, I will see all of those things when I visualize the course. And I've gotten, after all these years, there was a time where I would close my eyes and I could run the course in my mind. That's huge, because you could be in the hotel room at a national event, and I'm not even out of bed yet, and I'm running the course over and over again in my mind. So when I get that first run in, it's not my first run, it's my 1,000th run, right? It's just the first run I've done for real, but I've done it 1,000 times in my mind, and I've gotten to the point now where I can walk the course and I can run, if this makes any sense to anybody, I can run the course in my mind with my eyes open while I'm walking around or even talking to somebody. I can still segment my brain, and that maybe this is a testament to I've wasted my life in a parking lot. But I can run visually. I can run that course with my eyes open now. I don't even need to close my eyes or be in any certain mindset. I can literally be practicing the course with my eyes open as I walk around. And
you say it makes you realize the VR headset's going to enable people to do what's David Phelps call it? Basically, close your eyes and be turning the wheel and turning your body as you're going through the course. It's going to help other people that maybe aren't so visual be able to do that.
Yes. I think it's the next big thing. I think it's the next thing. Like I said already, it's going to be what data is now. I mean, VR will be in the future. You're going to see an entire grid of people with VR headsets on.
Especially if you can put can you overlay the data? I don't remember if you overlaid data on top of that. If you can throw in Solo Storm on top of that, and it can go, look, you're slow.
Yeah.
Go faster.
Mike Marich is the guy from Solo Data, and a great job, Mike. He's done an amazing job. He picked up right where Max Q left off and took it to another level. But, I've talked to him about the VR. So I wouldn't be surprised. I don't know anything if he's working on anything like this, but I wouldn't be surprised in the future, whether it's Mike and his system or someone else, where we get to the point where not only do you have data overlay, but you've got data overlay on the VR. So as I look into the corner, I still see my speed, my G-forces, my acceleration, and all of that is going to be the blending of video games and real life is becoming blurred. I mean, we're really getting to the point where virtual and real is becoming blurry.
Oh, yeah. The augmented reality is what I think of when you say that. I mean, I don't play the Snapchat filters. My kids love to. And yet on the new iPhone X, you can sit there and have a different background. I can do a video right now, and it'll put a different background behind me. It's like it's a green screen automatically. It's got it figured out. And they're saying eventually we may get to contacts, so we don't need a phone anymore. We can just do the VR run Oh, that would be, how fun would that be to have context that could superimpose your run or my run while I'm doing a run? Safely, of course.
Yeah, ghost mode. That's
exactly.
funny you say that, because that's what I thought to myself when I first envisioned using VR for autocross. I thought to myself, I'm a video game guy, I'm a driving guy, and I know ghost mode and PlayStation and on some of these auto racing games. I'm like, how cool would it be to have ghost mode with the fastest guy time, and I am literally chasing him in VR. That would be just, and we're gonna be there. I mean, we're gonna be there faster than anybody realizes.
Yeah.
Unless the new cars that are coming out they have so many nannies that you can't turn off and whatnot. I kind of worry about the future of sports cars, where the manufacturers are so worried about people wrecking and crashing and suing them that they're becoming more and more where you can't turn the nannies off, or you can't turn the traction control off. You can turn it off to a certain degree, but then the car decides, you can't seriously be, in control right now. I'm going to take over, even after you turned off all the nanny controls. Some cars, especially with autocrossing, because it's so violent, because the G-forces and the changing of the direction, a lot of the algorithms for most of these newer cars think you're about to crash.
Yeah.
You must be out of control, and even though you've turned it all off, it turns itself back on. And there are a lot of new cars that are like that, and I worry about the future of performance driving cars, and I can see a day where people will go, remember we used to drive the cars? Now they all drive themselves. I mean, what does that mean for SCCA in the long run?
It's going to become video games.
Will there be no...
We're all going to do video games with VR headsets. We're going to be 115 years old. I got you, Kevin. You cheated.
Yeah, every event will be national championships, because every national tour, people won't actually be there. We'll all be virtual.
Yeah, we'll all sign up.
Like 1,000. Yeah, it will be 100 people in STR every time you go, or a Super Street or whatever class.
You can race all virtual. You can race all the classes now. I love it. Yeah. I'm going to do all the classes. Whoever wins the most of the most classes is going to get the overall champion.
Exactly. I look at Brian Highcotter when he did the Sony PlayStation thing, and I did. It's funny. I did the. And some people remember when we did. Me and Ron Bauer. We did the Speed Channel show where we raced cars.
Yeah.
And I remember Brian when he did his television program. A lot of the guys that he raced against for that show had never really raced real cars. They had only done virtual. So you got to wonder where that's going to go 10 years from now.
Yeah, no kidding. How dare you actually burn petroleum and use tires to go and race?
Yeah.
Like, that's smelly.
Yeah, he's a national champion, but he's never really driven in a real car.
Exactly. You're like, that was the old days. That's so subpar. Oh, a couple things on setup. Tell us, do you tweak a lot of things? What if I say the car is hooking up well, working well for you? What's that mean to you? And what are you doing? Are you just setting it and leaving it? What do you do autocross wise?
Yeah, so I'm a big proponent of don't start twisting knobs and changing bars when you're not driving great. Now, if you know it's the car, that's one thing, but I think a lot of people come in and say, the car's not doing what I want it to do. Like, as an evolution instructor, I can't tell you how many times people drive their car and then I jump in the passenger seat or the driver's seat because, it's part of evolution. We drive your car. And then I can't tell you how many times I've had the student go, how did you make my car turn? I can't even believe we turned right there. And it's because I had good technique, right? I braked in a straight line. I actually slowed down for the corner, and then it appeared from the passenger seat as though the car really hooked up like it was on rails, right? Whereas the student was, braking while turning, and then, so I think that a lot of times people will immediately go to the knobs on their shocks or the sway bar and not look at themselves first, and not look at, am I doing the fundamentals right first? So I'm a big proponent of, if my car is good, then it's the car's good, and don't immediately go to the car changes. Like, Ken Motnishi asked me one time, I was racing down in California, and it's always a challenge for us Northwest region folks to go down to California because those guys never quit autocrossing. I mean, I think they take off some of the days in January because they just want to, not because they have to. The rest of the country, we can't autocross from like December through February because there's snow on the ground or something like that. And I go down there and race. I always felt like I'm at a disadvantage to those guys because I'm rusty and it's their own lot. And then, like in this particular case, when I talk about Ken, he came up to our Packwood site and he said to me, hey, my car's not handling good. What are you doing setup-wise? And I said, well, I'm not doing anything. He said, so your car's the same setup as it was at Crow's Landing? And I'm like, yeah, it is. The same setup I had Crow's Landing I have at Packwood. And, I like to set up my car as a compromise. I like to set it up for the regional events, which are asphalt. We have no concrete around here. And they're sometimes bumpy. Packwood's a fairly bumpy lot compared to like Bremerton, which is a taxiway, and some of our other sites. So I have a compromise. I'm not perfect for nationals, and I'm not perfect for regional events, but I find it kind of a happy middle, right? So, when it comes back to setup, once I get my car set up how I want it, I typically look at myself first, not the car. But yeah, if the car is egregiously understeering, then we'll tighten it up with the bar. If it's egregiously oversteering, we'll tighten it up with the bar. But me personally, I typically try to get my car to where it handles really good everywhere. And once I've got my car dialed in, I tend not to touch the knobs and the shocks and the sway bar unless it's raining or unless there's for some reason. And oftentimes it's tire related, right?
Oh,
I mean, people are chasing their setup and they've got their tires. They're not their best tires on. The Nationals is a good example. If you set your car up for the practice course, well, that doesn't mean that the national course you're gonna be perfect. So I tend to look at my own driving first, and then only touch knobs and adjustments and bars if I'm pretty confident that it's not me. Because often 9 times out of 10, it's me. I'm doing something. Or my tires have gone off, or something that I got OPR on them, or something like that. But I'm not a big run to run, want to change things in my car. And I know other people are different, and other people want to make changes, and there's nothing wrong with that. Again, it goes back to there's 100 ways to skin a cat, and I just choose not to focus on. I figure at a national event, my car should already be set up. It should already be awesome. So I shouldn't need very much changes in my car, unless it's surface related or car tire related. My car should be good. So I always look back at myself. I guess long story short, that's the first thing I look at is, am I driving correctly?
And that's where a co-driver or something can really help, because one year you mentioned tires. The rear tires in the Type R Integra, they didn't do much. You'd flip them and okay. They became rock hard, and for, I don't know, it was 2, 3, 4 events. I'm like, oh my goodness, I don't know what's wrong. I can't drive anymore. The car's so loose. And I jumped in the Civic, I think, for one of the first times. And Jesse was like, yeah, my car's too loose. I'm like, your car's not loose at all. I finally realized they just cycled out. They were just hard. And that's where somebody else had mentioned, like you said, if they don't have their best tires in there, don't start changing your setup. Just don't do that, or you have totally different tires, and you're like, I'm going to tweak it for today. I really think, at least back in the Hoosier days, people were like, oh, you're almost cording, or you got cords. I took that as a challenge to still drive fast and be smoother. I feel like all I do was be smoother on my inputs. I could still get something out of the tire, whatever was left, up to a point. But I wasn't over there like, oh, I'm going to change this and change that, because I've never done that. And yet, usually it seems to work out okay. Yeah, maybe I'm missing something like you're saying. You're not set up optimal for everywhere. But unless it's a big issue, I'm not trying to change much of anything.
Yeah, that's kind of how I am. Unless it's an egregious problem. And like I said, usually by the time I'm at a national level event, I've already dialed the car in. So it should be good. And making those changes might make me feel better. But, autocrossing is so cerebral. It's so where you are on course, and there's so many other things that can go wrong. I mean, sneezing on course. I mean, I run a local region. If you sneeze on course and packs, you're 3-4 positions back. Just from sneeze. Forget the car setup. I mean, I really think once you've got the car dialed in and it's working great, worrying about making all these changes run to run, I don't know. That's not me. That's not how I drive. Other people do that. They tweak the shocks every other run and get under there and change the sway bar. And unless it's weather conditions. I mean, if it started raining, then yeah, maybe you want to unhook the rear bar, or maybe you want to change your settings. But for the most part, for me, I try to run the car the same, whether it's California, Crow's Landing, grippy, concrete, flat as a billiard board, or it's my local event in Packwood, where it's bumpy and it's asphalt and there's low grip. Like I said, Ken was struggling, Monishi was struggling with his car a couple of years ago and at our Packwood site, and I said, hey, soften it up. You're at low grip, you're at bumpy, and you're used to, California events at either El Toro or Crow's Landing, and you're used to this billiard table, smooth, high grip surface. So maybe soften your car up, but. When I told him that I hadn't made any changes in my car, I think I won the Pro Solo last year at Packwood. My car setup was the same as it was at Crow's Landing. 2 completely different sites. And I know a lot of people are like, oh, that's great, you got to make changes. It's like, well, yeah, I'm sure you do, but how much of that is really you driving? I mean, you have the most control over what your car is doing, not the car.
Oh, yeah.
But I know there's people listening saying, oh, you got to make changes. And it's like, sure, but, hopefully you make the changes prior to the national level event, not during.
And I've done that. Oh, I need to change something now, or, oh, I wish I did the shocks. Not such a good idea. Or, oh, I'm going to go to the practice course and I should be driving like this because Brian Peters showed us that. It's like, no. Trust, once again, have enough. What got you there is all you're going to have. You're not just going to figure something out magically, most likely. Now, if somebody else gets in your car, or you get in their car and you're way faster, okay, maybe there's something to be said, like taking an underprepared car or low on power. I've not experienced that. It doesn't work out so well.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's so much more to do with your driving. It's how you're driving. Are you close to the cones? Are you getting on the gas early? Are you putting the car in good position? Are you looking ahead and really anticipating things? I think that has so much more importance in autocrossing than whether or not my shock is 1 click or 2 clicks one way or the other, honestly.
Good point. Very good point. So some of the end questions I usually have are, what's one of your most accomplished things that you think about? You're like, oh my goodness, was it the first time you beat Glenn? Was it something else in autocross that really sticks out to you?
Well, one of my proudest moments in autocross is taking top packs at the Solo Nationals. I don't know if anybody has ever done that twice, ever, in the history of solo competition, right? So just the fact that you could say that you were the top packs of 1,200 of the best crazy rabid autocrossers in the country is amazing. So in 2006, I top paxed, and I was younger then. I'm getting to the point now where I tell people all the time, I'm already fast. I'm trying to stay fast as I get older. In 2006, I was a top pax
out of 1,200 crazy autocrossers on a week of nationals that had no rain, right?
Oh,
because
yeah.
if it rains, somebody's going to get screwed, and you're not getting top packed. And you can make the argument that if you run first group in any heat anywhere, you're not going to be top packed because the course is not rubbered in, it's not scrubbed in, whatnot. But for me, I look back fondly at 2006 when I top packed. I beat all 1,200 of the best guys in the entire country. And that to me, I hold that close to my heart, that I achieved that goal. That is something to
how can you do any better?
Anybody who's ever done that.
Yeah, what else is there more to do? Oh.
Yeah, exactly, right? The top packs at the Solo Nationals. Do I have a string of national championships to my name? I don't. And that, I think, is attributed more to the fact that I have always chased after the hardest possible classes I could run in, the most talent, the most participation. I have not gone the route of an undersubscribed class where I dominate, or a prepared class where I've got the most dollars in my car and I crush all comers. I've never gone that route with autocrossing. I've always chased after the hardest competition I possibly can find, and because of that, I don't have a lot of national championships. I have the one in 2006, obviously, when I top packed everybody, but I've got lots of bridesmaids, lots of podiums in all the classes I run, but I don't have 10 national championships. Whereas, if I would have chose cherry-picked, and then I know everyone who's listening knows what that means when you cherry-pick a class and there's not a lot of talent and you just go in there and dominate and you're the man. For me, what I see when I think of, really good autocrossers is that the guys that have gone to all these different classes and they're amazing in all the classes, right? That to me says more about an autocrosser than 10 years undefeated. Like, I don't know John Thomas, but I'm sure he's a great driver, and but I think he had 10-year consecutive undefeated in FSP, or I don't even know, FP, I think it was back in the day. And I don't mean to diminish what he did at all. And anybody autocrossing, I'm not down on talking disparaging about anybody's accomplishments, but I think that, there are some people in the autocross world that have a reputation as an amazing driver, but when you really look at their career, they have not really put themselves in harm's way, I guess you say, or in a class of just crazy talent, right?
Oh, yeah.
And I have always done that, and because of that, I'm not a guy that can say, oh, Kevin Deet's 10-time national champion. It's like, no, you can't say that about me. You can say Kevin Deet's always in the running, always a guy to worry about for trophies, but I can't claim 10 championships to my name, or 5 or 3, or even, I really just have the one championship. But, STR a couple years ago, I missed it by 50,000th of a second. On the final run, I led the entire event till the final run, and, hats off to the guy that won. But I've always been a contender because I've always run these difficult classes. But, now as I get older, it gets harder and harder, right?
Yeah, no kidding. I'm
looking forward to SSC, honestly. I mean, it's funny. I'm looking past this year in STR, and of course I want to do well in STR. I finished with the fastest S2000 last year in STR, and it was, in STR I've kind of gone the long road. I got the wrong car with a Solstice at first. That wasn't competitive. Then I bought an AP1 STR, and I thought, I can make it happen. It's got 9,000 RPM. It's got this quick ratio steering. I said, the courses are going to come to me, but that didn't happen. AP1 is not the car. For those who are listening,
No, Kevin, shh. I'm looking at one out the window I keep meaning to sell. It is, you want this car in BSP. Okay, I admit it. Maybe BSP.
That's how I felt. And I'm so much of a David and Goliath guy. I love, like, when I ran my Cobalt, a Chevy Cobalt, I love that no one gave that car a shot. And then I think I almost won D Street. I think I've got a second and a third in national championships in that car, and lots of national level wins in a car that nobody thought was even competitive. So I love that about autocrossing. But the AP1, as soon as I got my AP2, I realized why I wasn't winning with my AP1. So, it's last year, it was the first year I finally took my AP1 to the nth degree, and the results were amazing. It's amazing. When you get to the pointy end of the spear, like we talked about already.
AP1 or AP2? This last year you took which one?
AP2.
Okay.
So my Sharknado that I affectionately call it now. Yeah, I was the fastest S2000 in nationals last year, and it was the first year that I actually turned my rev limiter up to where everybody else had their rev limiter. I was running a basically stock rev limiter. I thought, how much difference could that make? I don't want to blow my motor up. But then when I pushed it to what everyone else is doing, immediately I realized, oh my gosh, no wonder I'm having trouble, because that last couple hundred RPM made such a difference, not only in carrying the speed in first gear, but what I didn't really anticipate was when I went to second gear, I'm already high in the RPM range, so it was like my car exploded out of second gear now. And last year was the first time I actually ran. I've been in SCR 5 years now, so last year was the first year really that I had taken my car to that last bit of preparation, right? At the risk of blowing my motor up, but now I'm competitive in that car. So it's interesting. I look forward, like I said, to SSC because I love spec class racing. I think that is the epitome of racing in general. And I loved my days in Superstock back when there was a 60-car field and they were all Z06s. I loved that. That was so my fondest memories in autocrossing were racing in Superstock back in the day. And Hoosier tires, and everyone had the same car. It was amazing. So I'm kind of already looking past STR this year. I mean, obviously, I'm going to run STR this year. I want to do well, like everyone who autocrosses. But that SSC's got me interested for sure. Because then, what I've always loved about autocrossing is it's not so much your bank account, it's what you are as a driver. A good driver in a weaker car can set a faster time than a guy who doesn't always do it in a much higher horsepower car. That's what's always attracted me to autocross. Back when I was, in my early 20s, I thought, how cool is this? I used to race a 1980 Datsun 310.
Lots of power.
Right? 4-door Datsun 310 hatchback. So far from any performance car that you could ever find was that car. But I love that I could beat guys in turbo Firebirds back in the day, right? Formula Firebirds. And I was so cool. I beat this guy in a car that I couldn't even dream of buying, and that's what hooked me with autocross. So I'm always I always love that David and Goliath battle in autocross. The car that no one thinks can get it done, but you're a great driver, so you can make that happen. And then after you show everybody the car can get it done, it's amazing how many people all of a sudden flock to that car, or you can really change people's perceptions about what a car can and can't do just by being a really good driver.
Oh, sure, the Lemmings, like when they combined Civics and CRXs. Oh, that's going to be the car, Everybody sold all of them. Oh, the Miata people can't compete. Oh, wait, Miatas can compete. It's like, oh my goodness. Brain cramps.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what makes it interesting to me.
All the fun. Oh, so what's if you had to, if I had to make you pick a car, like I'm twisting your finger or something, I'm going to take your make your left foot brake if you don't. What car has been the favorite?
What car's my favorite?
Yep.
Good question. I don't know if I have a favorite car. You know, it's funny, when I started driving Corvettes, people were like, oh, midlife crisis, got to have a Corvette. I was like, no, I'm racing this car because it has the most talent and the most participation, and that's why I'm into it. I saw, you know, STR before it was a jacket class. I think Monishi won that first year. It wasn't even a jacket, he won. And I said, oh my God, this is going to be the new hottest class in solo. And this is the class I want to be in. So for me, I don't know if I look at autocrossing as like this car is like my favorite car. I look at more like this class, this participation level, this amount of talented drivers. That is more seductive to me than the car is. So, you know, I'm not necessarily, I love Chevrolet, but I'm not necessarily a Chevy guy. I'm not a Honda guy. I'm not a, you know, before I got my Honda, my S2000, I never owned a Honda in my life. I wasn't necessarily a Honda guy. And if I start running SSC next year, which is kind of on the roadmap for me, I wouldn't say I'm a Toyota guy, you know, but I've run Toyota MR2s back in East Street back in the day. We had a car all decked out like a zebra car. And it was fun, you know, and I went to East Street back in the day because it was a huge class back in the day, you know, 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah, and I think something you should take from this is you basically sought out competition, and that is one thing I wish I would have done more of, having faster people in my car, not just going to classes where I obviously couldn't beat everybody every time. But I like that people could take that from what you're saying, is seek out the larger classes where, like, there's almost a spec car, let's say. So it is about you more so than the car, or get in a car that you know is competitive with somebody to find out what's it going to take for you to get faster.
Exactly, because, you know, there's nothing, and I got a little bit of this when I ran the Cobalt and D Street, and I'd show up and there'd be like 4 people in the class, and I'm like, you know, I mean, it really comes back to what I've always said, is I would rather lose to somebody than to win against nobody. And I'm not disparaging anybody out there autocrossing, but like I said back in 2006, I think Darren DeSimo told me, I said, oh, I'm going to win C Street. And he said, well, what makes you think you're going to win C Street? And I said, well, because I don't know any of the names in C Street. I don't recognize anybody's name. And I know right now people are rolling their eyes. But I felt like, well, I'm going to beat them all because I don't know anybody, because I live and breathe autocross. So if you're a fast guy, I know your name, you know, because I pay attention. And I didn't see anybody's name in there that particular year that I said, oh, I know that guy. That guy's good. And, you know, I ended up winning. So I am definitely the kind of autocrosser that, you know, I want, you know, my dream class is having Sam Strano and Brian Peters and God, there's so many names, Andy Hollis, and I know I've said these names already, but oh my God, just
Gary Thomason can join in. Yeah, basically, we're going to do SSR, and we're going to throw everybody in there again.
I want all of the best guys in my class. That's what I want to run, and I would rather finish in 10th with 9 multi-time national champions in front of me than to be first, and I'm the only guy that's ever won a national championship in the class. Right?
Yeah.
I mean,
eventually, what's it mean? Yeah, what's it matter?
Yeah, so that's where I'm at. You know, it's you know, I say that now. I say all that now, but when I lose, I'm like everybody who is A-type personality. I'm like, oh, I'm like,
I think that's what drives me to be good. It drives me to practice and to continue to grow and to continue to learn and to continue to teach, because through teaching you learn. And I hope to stay as fast as I can for as long as I can. I think it was Tom Barry years ago was sitting next to me in FTR. We're sitting there on a golf cart. He looks at me, he goes, "You got rocks in your head, Kevin?" And I'm like, "What do you mean, Tom?" Rocks in my head. He goes, "Why are you running against all these young guys in STR? Why don't you get a mod car or prepared car, and then you could be the man?" And I'm like, well, because I think I can run with these young guys, damn it. I think I am the man, and I'm going to run with these young guys. So it's just always been my attitude, for better or worse. I don't have a string of championships to tout, but I put myself against anybody. There's no autocrosser out there that I don't think I can run with. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, competitive and confident. I like it. All right, so if I give you unlimited budget, what would you build for the fun of it, if anything? I realize this may not apply at all, but if you could build anything or have any car, what would it be? What would be a pure fun?
Well, I love the Corvette. I think that is the quintessential autocross car. You can run it hard. You can set fast time of day. You can set top packs. Most Corvettes have more in it than you can get out. And I think most Corvette guys would agree that there's always more in that car, and which is why I have been drawn to STR, because it's rare that I run a course that I said, that's as good as I could possibly do. I feel like I can get close, but it's not like the MR2, E Street MR2 or Miata, where I'm floored off every corner, and I really can say with confidence, that's as fast as I pretty much can go. When you have a higher horsepower car, and I've never driven like a Jeff Kiesel's car, right? I mean, that car is amazing. Or Amy McKee's RX-7, or some of these other SSM cars. I mean, I've watched Andy McKee's car go across the course, and my brain for a second, said, it short-circuited. It's like, that can't have just accelerated like I just saw. I mean, it didn't even look real. It looked like somebody had fast-forwarded real life, and that car shot through the course. So those kind of cars fascinate me. I'm not a big car. I don't want to spend my weekends working on my broken car, and I think SSM and those kind of guys, they're working on their cars a lot. And I would prefer to race, to hang out with my friends, to go out to dinner, to stay at hotels. I mean, to me, that's more fun than wrenching on my car all night long. But if you're saying a perfect world with unlimited budgets, yeah, I'd like to have a Jeff Kiesel car or an Andy McKee car where I am not only top packs of the event, but I am crushing everybody. I mean, that would be awesome, right? That'd be awesome.
I won, and I crushed everybody. And that's I got to ride in a new McLaren this past race, and it wasn't really an autocross. They took a track and they put an autocross kind of on it. That acceleration was insane. Like, I was trying to hold the camera up to do a video of the run, and it kept dipping down like I was in a Dodge Viper or something. And we're going up the bank, and I'm like, this is so freaking fast. There's a wall over here. This car is quite expensive. Like, I was having a hard time to even focus because we were going so fast. I'm like, hopefully this thing can actually slow down. And much like a Z06, it could. But that was insane. And they said, oh, by the way, it doesn't even give you full power until third gear anyway. I'm like, I've yet to drive really fast cars, so I don't. Part of it says I don't want to get addicted to it and never go back to these other cars, which I'm impressed you have gone back to like an S2000 from a Corvette. That is impressive. So I'm glad there are people like you that have actually done that.
Well, honestly, an STR, it's faster than an A Street Corvette or a Superstock back in the day. An index for STR is harder than those cars. So my car is literally faster. The Honda's faster than a Corvette.
Yeah, just didn't have all that go power. Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't have in a straight line. Corvette blow an STR Honda away, but on the autocross course, not so much. We have a harder index than those guys do, which I love. It ups the challenge level in driver ability. When I move to SSC, I can keep up with my email while I'm autocrossing in that car because the throttle pedal feels broken when I drive it. I have a local car. My co-driver has an SSC. We've now put together an SSC FRS. So, yeah, it's not quite as exhilarating as my. He drives it on a daily basis, and he says he can't stand it because he came from an M3. And Peter Sarkovich, and Peter says, I hate driving this car every day. He's Polish. He's got an accent. And I said, but it's about the competition. He's like, but this car's so slow.
Hey, tell him, be glad he's not here at altitude because that's the only place I've raced him so far. That's 20% less power. I was actually impressed. I'm like, okay, it's got a little pep. I'm coming from a Civic a lot of times, so okay, it's got a little torque compared to the Type R S2000 AP1 that I drive as frequently as anything right now. It's like it kind of goes. So I can't wait to go to sea level, or in this case, Florida, in a week or so, to really see what it's like with 20% more. I think it'll actually be kind of fun.
Yeah, I'm impressed with the chassis and the setup on that car. I got a chance to drive. Those cars have been out for a while, so I've driven it before, and I've always been impressed with that car. It does everything right. It's like a Miata. It's super stable, great chassis, really predictable, inspires confidence, and then with this SOC trim that Tire Rack. Shout out to Tire Rack. Thank you guys. If there's anybody from Tire Rack listening, thank you so much for all the years you've been sponsoring Solo. I buy all my tires to you guys. I encourage everybody to buy not just your tires for your autocross car, but your truck, your daily driver. Buy them from Tire Rack because those guys have been supporting us. And that package they put together, it works really well. I'm impressed with it. I've driven the car a handful of times already this year, and the Falcons, which is a tire that was decided upon, was fast right out of the box. For our northern climate, it's cold and rainy at the beginning of the year and the end of the season, and those tires worked right away without even tire bags. They were just fast right out of the box.
Oh, that's interesting.
I can't say for the rivals. I've been sponsored by BF Goodrich and use BF Goodrich tires for years now in STR, and they're an awesome tire. But if the temperatures are in the 40s, that's not the tire you want to be on.
Yeah.
And the Falcons are amazing. They're amazing tire. Bang for the buck. I think it was a good choice by the SSC. I guess long story short, I think they chose good when they chose that tire. Affordability, cost, durability. Apparently, I have not had a chance to run it when it's really hot out, but people have said the tire does fairly well with heat. It deals well with heat. I know the Rival does an amazing job with temperature, much better than the Bridgestone does, and with back-to-back co-drivers and whatnot on hot weather days. So I think it's a good package. I think SSC, I'll say it now, I think that SSC will be the new class to be in. It'll be the hottest class. Right now, I think STR is the hottest class. I know there's some superstar guys that are saying, oh, no, we're the class, and everyone else thinks their class is the bomb. But, when you look at nationals, whatever the highest participation class is, that's the class. I'm sorry to tell you, if you don't have 40 or 50 or 60 or 70 people in your class, you are not in the hottest class in Solo.
The hotness factor, they're not there.
It's not. And I think SSC is going to get to that point. I was really looking for an A Street ride next year before SSC came along because I'd love to get back in the Corvette. And I thought for the last couple of years A Street would take off. I really thought, okay, it's going to be the new super stock. And it really was a slow starter. I think you've got some talent in there now with Junior Johnson and Daddio and some of the other guys that are in A Street, and that's really where I thought I was going to go. going forward was I was back in the Corvette and back to some drives like that, because not that STR isn't talented and aren't fast drivers, but I think I've been in there. This is my 5th or 6th year, and one of the things I love about solo competition is that you can change classes. You don't have $100,000 invested in your race car like a lot of road race guys do, and they're stuck. This is my car. I raced for 20 years, but I raced the same car for 18 of those years. So I love solo in that you can jump from cars to classes, and it's not a big thing, So I just think that I've raced everybody in STR. I've been a competitor. I haven't won it yet. This is why I'm going one more year. But I enjoy racing with new people. So I'm looking forward to, so to speak, a new class. Although I see some new people getting in STR. That new Miata has got a lot of people jumping in STR. So I see some new faces in STR. Lou God's getting back in STR.
Have you driven one of those? Have you been in one?
Peter Loney is in STR. A lot of people getting in STR now. So there'll be a whole other year of new talent. It'll be great.
Have you
I driven one? Yeah. Yeah, Ron Bauer has one. And I've got a chance to drive his car. In fact, at the Pro Solo, I think it was a couple of years ago, my car broke, clutch went out in my car, and Ron dragged his car out of the trailer and let me finish the Pro Solo competition. I think it was challenge rounds, and I was going for 3rd place against Ryan Otis, I think, and I had never really driven the Miata, and I did well. It popped off a 5 light and damn near won the thing in that car. I like the Miata. It's a good chassis. It's great. It doesn't feel, to the seat of the pants, doesn't feel as fast as the STR car, but it's so lightweight. It's just quicker out of the corner. It's got more torque than the Honda. I really think it's the new car for STR. I think the Honda is still competitive at the national level. I don't know how competitive it is on smaller lots with asphalt low grip, because that we're talking almost 400 pounds difference between prepped Miata versus the S2000, and that's a CR, not even my car. My car's not even a CR, so I'm another extra 100 pounds heavier than STR and a CR car is. So I think Miata's going to dominate STR pretty soon. If not this year, then next year probably for sure, which is why I'm kind of looking for another class at this point. I shouldn't say that because technically my car's for sale. If anybody's listening that's interested in a nationally prepared fastest S2000 in 2017 car, it's for sale. Come talk to me. But yeah, and that's how it is with classes, right? They evolve. Solo classes evolve, especially with your street tire or stock. From year to year to year, they evolve, and I like evolving with that. So that's why I'm looking to, as SSC being the new hot class, I see a lot of talented drivers starting to navigate towards that spec class. Which, if you're a pure driver, if you're really all about driver skill and driving, then the great thing about spec classes is it takes the car out of the equation.
Yeah,
I
that's
have
my
the
hope.
same tool everyone else does. It's not a matter of my checkbook is deeper, and I can afford all of the little crazy things that cost money that save nothing for time, really, literally. I mean, you're paying crazy amounts of money for, a couple hundredths of a second, maybe? I think SSC is going to be the new, prove it class, and SSC will be the new, this will be the class to be in. And I see talent going that way. And I thought that would be happening in AA Street, and there is some talented guys in A Street, but it didn't really fill up like I thought. I thought SSR would collapse. I mean, I know there's a lot of guys that want Hoosiers on those cars, and I know that's a big thing for a while. I'm not a big forum guy that goes on there and banters on the forums, but I got people that talk to me, and there was a big thing about that. SSR and SSC let them keep their art compound tires, but that's kind of going away. And I thought SSR would all devolve in A Street becoming the new hot class, but that really, it just really hasn't happened yet. And not to discount anybody talented in A Street. I know a lot of fast guys are my friends who are in A Street, but I think SSC is going to be the new talent, new prove your metal class, and that's where I want to be.
All right. Hopefully I'll still be there by the time you get there.
Awesome. I can't wait, man. You and I have run together a few times, and you're a talented guy. I mean, I love racing against talented guys. I just love it.
Yeah, exactly. The competition, and that's where I think anybody that's not in a class where they have that, you've got to look at the overall and see what you can do locally, or anywhere you're at. What can you do to prove that you're getting better or not?
Yeah. It's, I mean, we spend a lot of money in this sport. We spend a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of effort, and like I said earlier, people think, oh, I'm doing EVO schools. Like, oh, what's it like to win all the time? It's like I don't win all the time. At the regional level, it looks like I win all the time, but I don't, and it's that not winning all the time that makes the winning sweeter.
Yeah.
So, I wouldn't want to run a class I won every single year at nationals. Oh, I'm the 15th time I'm the national champion. You know what it tells me? It tells me you're running in a class with no talent.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to those people that have 15-time undefeated national championships, and I don't mean to rub any feathers sideways. I'm sure you're talented, but the really good classes are the ones that every single year there's a different winner, because it's that much talent in the class. No one can dominate it.
Can keep doing it. Well, hey, I appreciate all the time and all the insights there and making this happen, as well as your work once again to do the live streaming, and then you're bringing VR out for us. It's all your fault.
Yeah, I told my friend Baz Mike, I said, well, when I started the live stream, it's like, well, even if it doesn't take off and SSC doesn't want to, I was the first guy. No one, if it takes off, if next year SSCA says, hey, we should live stream all the events, I'll be like, hey, I was the first one to do that. And if VR takes off, I can say, hey, I was the first guy to really, at least at the national level, start using VR. And like I said, I think that's going to be like the new thing, like with how data is now. People are going to be, I don't know if that's good or bad, but, I think people are going to be there with the headsets, augmented reality. I think all that is coming at us faster than we can possibly know.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Well, great. Well, thanks again. And if you have any final thoughts or people you'd like to thank, you thank Tire Rack and such, let us know. And also, I'll get links in the show notes, anything you can send me.
Yeah, well, I'd like, my sponsors, BF Goodrich, they've been good to me and let me help develop the Rival back in the day. I did some testing at Nationals after Nationals was over to help develop that tire, and I love that manufacturers are trying to support our sport. I think, it's smart on their part to realize that for every one autocrosser, they're influencing hundreds of people's decisions on what the best tire is. So I think BFG has done a good job with that. I've got some other sponsors that have helped me over the years, and I think those guys are all worth mentioning. Carceps, and they've given me some great bars, and they make great products. And my local guys here regionally, Chase Race, has helped me out, and my co-driver, Piotr Sarkovic, has been a good guy helping me out. But final thoughts would be that I think if you're an autocrosser out there and you're looking to go faster, go find some instruction. Let the fast guy drive your car. Be willing to be humbled. Be willing to unlearn what you've done and try new things. And I think that the goal of autocross is to have fun ultimately. I'm crazy competitive. I mean, I can't. There's hardly nothing I can't do that doesn't involves some type of competition, but understand that it's about the fun, and don't get so tied up in the competition that it gets frustrating with you, because you really got to focus on the fun factor. And I hope everybody keeps that in mind when they're autocrossing, and share their knowledge and share their interest and enthusiasm in the sport, so we can grow the sport, so that it become even more recognized than it is now. I mean, how often do we hear that it's just parking lot racing? It doesn't mean anything. I beg to differ. I think some of the best drivers in the world are autocrossers. They just haven't been given the opportunity to shine at the national level, right?
Yeah, good point. Very good point. It seems like some of them break out, and you're like, wow, they're fast on anything they do, everywhere they go.
Yeah, I think so many guys want to get into track racing, and they never even autocrossed one time. I mean, I can't tell you how many guys I run into, like, oh yeah, I'm taking my car to the track for the first time ever. It's like, have you done any autocross? Like, no. I'm like, oh, well, dude, you should do some autocrossing before you go, ball your car up in the weeds because you didn't know what to do at 100 miles an hour.
Yeah.
And you made the wrong decision, and then your car is a pile of metal in the corner. Hopefully you're okay, but autocrossing is a great sport. It's a great sport for families. It's a great sport for meeting other people, and it's changed my life. I think that I don't know what I'd be or where I'd be without my autocross family. I don't have any children, so for me, my family is autocrossers, and I can't thank the autocross community enough for all of the opportunity it's given me. Hell, I did a TV show for on Speed Channel. I did 2 seasons, a television program, and the only reason I got that opportunity is because I was autocrossing. So there's lots of opportunity for autocrossers, and I look for hopefully good things in the future for everybody in the autocross community. And I love it. I love autocrossing. I love the people autocrossing, and I hope to do it forever. I hope to do it till the day I die. Set fast time of day, top packs, and then keel over in my car.
I'm done.
There on the spot. It's like, that would be the ultimate for me. It's like, I don't want to die in an old folks home. I want to set fast time of day, top packs.
Done.
And then done.
My work here is done.
We've had a lot of autocrossers pass away in the last few years, so it's a community. It's really a community. I've done some road racing. It's not the same. Road racing say, oh, we're a community. We're a community. It's like, no, you're not. You're not as much a community as autocrossers are. Autocrossers are really a family, and it's a special thing. And I really love it. And I love all the companies that are trying to help us all out. Tire Rack has been an amazing sponsor for autocrossing. I hope we never come to the point where Tire Rack says, oh, well, we don't want to sponsor you anymore. Where would we be as a club without that company? I mean, John Rogers and I know each other well. I look forward to seeing him at all the events we go to at the national level, especially nationals, and he is an amazing guy. And I think Tire Rack has been so influential in our sport that people sometimes neglect that, right? They'll see, oh, I can buy these tires for $50 cheaper if I buy them from Discount Tire. It's like, well, yeah, you could, but, in the long run, long story short, Tire Rack is who's supporting your racing. So
your addiction.
Yeah. So, support them. Support the sponsors that support us. I mean, as a small business owner, it means something. It's important that we support the sponsors that support us. So, in Evolution Schools, if you haven't had a chance to go take an Evolution class, it's worth it. It's worth it. There, Phase 1 works on skills, basic skills, and the looking ahead aspect of autocross, which we're all working on, even me, after all these years. Phase 2 gets into the mental aspect of the sport. If you think you've you've got a handle on the fundamentals. Well, guess what? You don't have a handle on the mental aspects of it. No one does. We're all working on that, and that's what Phase 2 does. And then they've got a great challenge school program. That's for the guys that are looking to go faster and need that push. At a challenge school, I'm going to push you. I'm going to actually be in competition with you. I'm going to get you in the mode of competition. And it's interesting when I teach evolution Phase 3 schools, or the challenge schools, I should say, is that the guy who's got a couple national championships in his belt, he's all good until he really starts to compete. And when he really starts to push himself, oftentimes I see they start forgetting the fundamentals. So, a challenge school is a great way to see if when the action gets hot, do you start forgetting the fundamentals, or do you focus on the fundamentals? So I love the challenge school, and I think that everybody who's been autocrossing for a while should take that challenge school, and evolution schools in general, any schooling, any practice from national level instructors is always going to be a good thing. So, I feel real proud that Junior Johnson has allowed me to represent the school, and I think it's one of the best bang for the bucks you can do. Better than any shock or sway bar combination you could ever buy is go take one of those schools.
Yeah, no, thanks for the plug there. That makes sense. And that's where I remember trying to sign up for an Evo, and I was like, no, you're too good for that. Like, do the next. So it's good to hear about the challenge school, that it's some place to really help us work on that mental aspect of being pushed.
Yeah, because people sometimes they're technically perfect until they really want to go fast, and that's when they start to have problems. That's when they start to overdrive, which feels fast. It always feels fast to overdrive, but it's not fast on the clock, and the clock is what matters. I always tell people in schools, your butt dynamometer, when you cross the line and you thought that was a faster run, and we've all had this, oh, that was a good run. You look at the clock, it's not faster. Well, who told you it was a good run? Your butt dynamometer did. Your butt dyno called your brain and said, this was a really good run. And it wasn't, right, according to the clock. So we all have to realize our butt dynamometer lies. It's lying to us.
That, or we're just not focused enough to remember that we had mistakes, or we're just not aware of what's really going on.
Yeah, your brain is what's driving the car, not your butt dynamometer. So the really fast guys know that. They are disciplined in their application of throttle and braking,
Yep. Very true, very true. Well, this was great. I appreciate all the insights once again.
Yeah, man, I appreciate to be part of your autocross talk. I've listened to a lot of other guys I really respect in the autocross community, and it's so interesting to listen to all of their different ways that everyone looks at the sport, from course walking to driving to even the social aspect of it. I think what you're bringing to the community is just as amazing as when I was live streaming everything. I think it is. I think it's awesome, Kinch, and you've done a fantastic job continuing to spread the knowledge, right? I think the competition level in autocross has gone up so high from where it was 20 years ago. You have to be really, really good now because there's so much knowledge out there. There's so much information with data and video and conversation and intercommunications between drivers and social media, and what you're bringing to it here with Autocross Talk is it's revolutionary, man. And you should be proud of yourself to have as many people that are excited to listen to the next edition of Autocross Talk from Kinch Rendell. It's awesome, man. It's fantastic.
Everybody just needs to stay on top of me to get them out. There's probably 4 of them sitting there right now. I'm like, oh yeah, start doing 2 a month again. At least do 2 a month. So, no, thanks for adding to it.
Yeah, man. Well, I wish you the best of success, and I'll be interested to listen to all of your future autocrossers that you have on Autocross Talk, because I think it's helping the whole community become faster. Autocross is just becoming more and more mainstream and more respected in the motorsports community.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Thanks for listening. For the show notes and contact information, please visit autocrosstalk.com. There you can also subscribe so that we can keep you up to date on new shows as they come out. Also, please leave us a review on iTunes and subscribe on iTunes for the upcoming shows. You can connect to our Facebook page at facebook.com/autocrosstalk. You can share your thoughts, your insights, your questions, your suggestions there. Also, share with your friends. Hopefully you found it entertaining and motivating, and hopefully other people will as well. It's been fun, and I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for listening, and check back next week for the next show.